September 16th, 2020. Sherry, could we have a roll call, please?
Chair Quillisi,
Here?
Vice Chair Nolan,
Here.
Commissioner Lottis,
Here.
Commissioner Trent,
Here.
Commissioner Swift.
Here.
Thank you.
Terrific. Can we do a Pledge of Allegiance? Is there a flag there? Terrific. Okay. If you'll all follow me then. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we're back. All right. The next item on the agenda is public communications. Lucas, Sherry, have we had any voice or written communications from the public?
None that I've received.
All right.
Not tonight.
Then we won't worry about that part. And we'll move on to consent items, the minutes of the regular meeting of September 2nd and the special meeting of September 9th. Any corrections or changes from any of the commissioners?
I just have a minor correction.
Okay. Is this September 2nd or the 9th?
The second. On the design review permit, the 220 design review, DRP 20-002, so it's item 2. I would suggest that the wording under under number 1, where we say add another whereas, stating the proposed building height, comma, mass and scale of this project is consistent and I just spell compatible with an E, not a Y on the end. And I would say,
This is in the motion? Yes.
it's the wording for the whereas.
Right.
And because I went back and looked at my notes.
Yes.
I just wanted to be a little more specific. So we say the specifically the 1202 San Ramon Way, the home directly across the street. That's fine, comma, as well as the siting of the proposed home that mirrors, no apostrophe on mirrors, 1202 San Ramon Way.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think so too, Kathy. It further clarifies our intent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And under discussion items number 3, I think we should just say staff presented the item to the commission. There was nothing about owners, I don't think.
That was an error, yeah.
That's
Leftover.
right.
That was a leftover.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. Just clarifying that. That's it.
Okay. How about September 9th? That was pretty short.
Yeah.
Then perhaps we could have a motion to approve the September 2nd minutes as amended and the September 9th minutes as presented.
So I'll move to approve the minutes for September 2nd and for September 9th with the September 2nd minutes as amended.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? Sherry, could we have a roll call, please?
Quillisi,
Yes?
Nolan,
Yes.
Lottis,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes. Yes.
Swift.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Next on the agenda is the discussion item Title 10 Cleanup, Item 3, And we have what looks like another draft text amendment. Lucas, could you take us through this, please?
Yeah, sure. This is gonna be a bit of a grind here tonight. As I had mentioned, I think a couple of meetings ago, we were gearing up. I had staff work on this for the last couple of weeks, gearing up for about 65. I was 5 sections. I think that's where we're at right now.
Yep.
65 or 66 sections. So my thought is that we just go through this section by section. You as a commission have not seen any of these sections at this point. So, and remember, when we're going through these sections, we're looking at errata and minor revisions. Any sort of deeper dive points that you're wanting to make or even to think about, you bring those up, but just know that we're saving those for a later date. Like, for instance, at the last regularly scheduled meeting, we were diving into some of that with Creekside and those hillside development standards and criteria. So absolutely, during those points, that's where we want to get into the meat of it. And if it requires additional research and to look into a couple items, that's fine. But here, we're looking at surface, establishing that foundation as we discussed previously with the first errata that the commission had voted on to go to council. So in addition to that, I sent off, Chair Quillisi was nice enough to go through this pretty exclusively and identify certain components and I would call it revisions to consider as well. And I'd almost like to go through that in addition to going through each of these sections, if that's okay with the commission. I think that probably makes sense to acknowledge some of these points. And I'm assuming that all the commissioners have that in front of them now to take a look at, to talk through. And some of these things are fairly simple. Some of them may have a little bit more of a discussion piece to them, but there's right around 5 pages worth of information here to kind of boil down. So anyway, with that, there are other sections that are within the errata. I think we're getting close to closing the page on errata and moving into the stage of the deeper dive into some of these sections into the future. And I'll be highlighting that in the coming weeks as well when we get into some of that with the commission. So just know that that's coming as well. We're not stopping with this. There's not going to be any sort of a pause as we're going through this as well. Just know that. We're going full steam ahead. I've said it before, this is a marathon, not a race. Some of these pieces will feel like a race, but just know that the sum of the whole is more of a marathon as we go through this. So anyway, all right, with that being said, I'd say, does anybody have any questions before we start diving into?
So nothing is packaged at this point to go on to council. Is that correct?
For tonight?
No, I mean, because we have done a lot of errata, but nothing at this point is packaged to go to council.
For the next meeting, no.
Okay.
But in the very near future, yes.
Okay, because I thought I heard council. I mean, I think I got in at the tail end of their meeting, that they did make some reference to zoning errata, I thought, but so is something going to them in the next month or so, or?
I thought we had already approved recommending a draft text amendment to council a couple of meetings ago. This is another batch like that. Keeping in mind, this kind of cleaning errata and then going through a deeper dive has not been done with the code in a long time.
Right.
There have been individual section changes when an issue arose, but in general, the most recent major rewrite of any part of Title 10 was in 2004. And so I think we should expect that there will be a lot of errata. And then when we get done with that, there will be a lot of questions that we need to make some value judgments on policy and recommend one way or the other to the council. And that's what that next round of deeper dives will be. Is that right, Lucas?
That's correct. And when we started doing some of that at the last regularly scheduled
Right.
meeting where we were diving into the Creekside standards
Right.
and
We had 3 or 4 sections there that we
yep.
looked at in some detail.
So,
And as we're moving forward on this, that's the anticipation is deeper dives on some of those other pieces, making sure that we're still covering the errata as well. Because once that's put to bed, it's deeper dive for everything moving forward.
so but we've got the Creekside back again tonight. So, but that's exactly errata or.
Yeah, so that's only errata. That's
It's
only
only
errata
errata?
of what we're looking at. It should only be errata. I remember looking at that. Or did I pull that in with, let me look here.
I don't know. I mean,
1103 is in there,
we've got
but not 1104 and 1105.
changes that we suggested. So I don't know if it's errata or I mean, I think we're trying to be basically true to the intent of the existing wording. So it's probably anyway. I was just looking for a little clarification because I'm getting a little, I was wondering exactly what was going to counsel. It's only errata, but I feel in some of the areas that we've talked about, it's not a bad thing, that we've probably strayed a little bit beyond just errata, but.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is, I hate to jump into section 9, but this one really is errata. If you look at the way in which this 1103, which is section 9, functions as errata.
Section 9, wait a
That's
second.
page 12 and on to 13
Right.
of 74.
Yeah, and actually,
Development.
and just so that we can clarify this on section 9, and then we'll jump back to the beginning here. The very last, so as it jumps from page 12 to 13, it goes on to say no explanation of what might be exempt. At least we should cite the Ojai Municipal Code sections dealing with exemptions. So that's a discussion piece. It's not meant to be something for consideration as a part of the code. Although it reads as
It shows up in red right
in
now.
red, but it's meant to be a discussion piece.
So would that have been yellow?
Should have been in yellow. That was the
Okay.
whole. That was
I'll just take my highlighter.
There are a few places where things are highlighted
exactly.
Right here.
that we'll come back to them. So when we get done with this and recommend something to council, a lot of that will be stripped out. So it's just the changes to errata.
Okay. And are we doing, so is the entire errata going to council all at once, or are you dividing?
We're working through that currently.
Okay.
Sousa's going to have a lot of reading to do.
She's going to be prepared, though. She'll have heard
Ah,
all these rounds here.
She sounded prepared to do that when we last discussed it.
Yeah. All right. Let's just start from the beginning here. I'm reading from Chair Quillis's points, the information he emailed out on September 13th. So it says attachment 1, page 1, the fourth whereas within the attachment. It cites the text amendment 19-005, which is the same site as the draft ordinance considered in the August 5th PC, which was eventually passed and recommended to City Council should there be a different site here. So understand that the whereas is here. The meat of what we're looking at here is the sections, but that is true. We are going to be renumbering it, and each of these text amendments that come forward will have a separate number. It wasn't reflected in what we're looking at here tonight, but there will be a different numbering, and I think anyway it'll be a different number. It'll be a 20-002 or 003 or something like that.
And the other one was 19-005 because we started it in 2019.
Correct.
Okay.
And so we don't preview another time whatever goes to council. Whatever we've done, it's not coming back to us. Is that correct?
We've put that to bed. That's correct. It's been decided by this commission, and now it's being considered by council
Okay.
as a recommendation.
And before the meeting started, Lucas was suggesting that it may be unrealistic to think we can get through all 74 sections or whatever it is, 74 pages here. So we'll go until we're tired and then pick it up again at the next meeting.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, I was wondering myself.
Well, 74 sections. Did anybody bring a sleeping bag? Because I didn't bring a sleeping bag tonight, people.
I didn't either, and I haven't eaten dinner.
Uh-oh.
All right, so that's one. Let's move on to two. Again, attachment A, page 2, line 1, this correction to 10-2.304. So page 2, line 1, allowed in the section name seems to duplicate a correction we already did on August 5th. Am I missing something here? So exemptions from, oh, I see what you're saying.
You're showing, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a new section that we're looking at here, not, so it's consistency here, correct?
I thought we had already made the correction, that's all.
Oh, within 304. Have we already seen 304? Was that already in the previous?
I believe that was in the August 5th.
Let me double check that.
Something to check when you get to the next iteration of this text amendment.
Okay. These numbers do start to flow together, so.
Oh, yeah. Lucas and I have spent way more hours than we had hoped going through this stuff already.
I
Well,
can
anticipated,
imagine.
but you know, it comes with the territory.
Right.
What I signed up for already. Okay, already signed. Just look this up. All right.
And I left all discussion of indents off of this because you said that the people who actually, I don't want to say typeset, but the people who actually create the code off-site will take care of all of that. But they don't take care of things like italics or underlined or stuff like that, correct?
The italics they will take care of as well.
Oh, they will.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's a consistent flow throughout the document.
Okay.
All right, then item 3, we don't need to worry about.
Oh, the italics, I see. On page 2-203.
2 and 3.
Actually. Okay.
I just have one point to make, and again, it's just maybe something for the future. So we allow reconstruction of destroyed uses and structures, provided that blah, blah, blah. Number 3 says the use is compatible with other uses allowed in the zoning district and or neighborhood. So my only question would be, so who determines that? I mean, in general, you're allowed to, you can, if it's a pre-existing use and the house burned down, you could resurrect the use and the structure, right? So anyway, just a question about that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if you rebuild a house, you go through a new zoning clearance, is that right?
Yes, you would go. Why are you going? You would go through a new zoning clearance unless there is some sort of, unless it's a 2-story. I mean, there's, let's see, does it give leniency to that? Established. Electrical, the use is compatible with other uses allowed in the zoning district and or neighborhood.
Which page are we on now?
Page,
Is this
Oh,
2 of
page.
74?
Page 2 of 74.
Yeah, so it's 2 of 74.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all existing wording, so I mean, this is maybe something we could come back to because there's some things in there I'm just wondering about if it needs.
I'm presuming that as we go through this and find things that we feel require a deeper dive, that Lucas will just keep track of those sections, and then he and I will go back through it and take another look, and then bring something back to council. I'm serious, back to the
Yeah. I mean, like who says whether one use is compatible with other uses? I mean, it's you know, if they've got a non-conforming use that's somehow somewhat undesirable, does that mean they couldn't keep it? They couldn't redo it again? Anyway, just a question. That's all.
Kathy, would it be referring to possibly if the zoning had changed at some point? Let's just say they had, I'm just making this up, some sort of ag buildings and they burned along with the house, and now the property's rezoned and it's not ag any longer. Would they be able to rebuild the ag buildings because it now is not compliant?
Right, or maybe they used to be in the zone that allowed horses and now.
Yeah, and I'm just making that up for an example, but
okay.
something like that possibly.
Maybe that works. I just caught my eye. Okay, we can move on.
All right. So attachment A, page 3, 10-2.907. C, line 2 and 3, table 4-6, and government code 65951.915.5 are in conflict.
Yep, that's I think worthy of a deeper dive.
From 5 to 35.
Go up here.
Hold on here. Where are we looking at here? It could be a deeper dive, but let's just see here.
See, is that at the top of the page, and then it's referring to the table on page 5, correct? Is that what we're doing here? I just want to make sure I'm at the
It's a reference to the table that's on pages 4 through 6.
Right. Okay. And we're at the top of page 3.
We're about
Maybe not. Maybe I'm in the wrong place.
we're
A little bit further down.
We're at paragraph C on page 3,
Oh, okay.
line
Okay.
2 and 3.
Okay.
Refers to the table
I
and
see.
then to the
Okay.
government code.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So I think that is something we're going to have to talk about, and maybe even get something from the city attorney, because the government code right now puts a single number on density bonus factor. And if we, as a locality, have the option to change that, then that's fine, and the wording doesn't need to be changed. But if we don't have that option, then we may have to go back and change the table
Right.
as we do a deeper dive. I just wanted to make the point that inconsistency is there.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then we get to page 4. I think what happened was an older version of 10.2.907 was put in here rather than the latest version, because I recognize some of these changes that Lucas and I already recommended, or that we had agreed to recommend to the commission.
So this is on page 4.
On page 4,
D,
paragraph D, like dog,
lines 2 and 3. Okay.
and it's about 6 or 8 lines down. Oh, wait a minute.
It says lines 2 and 3 of D. Is that correct?
A major transit stop. Well, see, I screwed up.
No. No, I'm seeing it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, it's a little further down, I think.
Yeah, 6 down. It starts on the right-hand side of that paragraph.
Right. With the transit stop.
Yep. Anyway, that's just for a consistency with the state code, which calls out both a major transit stop and a high quality transit corridor. I don't believe that we have a high quality transit corridor in the city at the moment. We do have that bus that 16, I think it is, that runs up here from Ventura.
Mhm.
But I think the high quality transit corridor is defined as having much more frequent visitations by buses than
Yeah.
what we have. So maybe we don't need to add those words because the situation doesn't and may not ever exist in Ojai. But words there are true to the state code, and I think we should decide whether we want to add them or not. Here it is. Yeah. Yeah, it actually starts on line 6 of that paragraph. I apologize. That was a carryover from the previous item, probably.
Okay. So any questions on that one? No? Okay.
Are you just talking about adding the additional reference, which, I mean,
Right.
Yep.
I think
Just-
that's fine.
Just
Yeah.
the underlined.
All right, moving on to 6. So we're saying here 7 through 9, pages 7 through 9, 10-2.
More of that, italics.
Same as item 3 for subsections E through M. Oh, you're talking about the italics?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Moving on. Let's see, we have page 3, line 7. Page 3, line 7. So we're going back here.
Skip back. Yes.
Okay.
Changing from California Gov site to a California CID site. In context, it appears the site should be to the definition of the common interest development rather than to density bonuses. Where did I have that one at?
This is a change that Lucas made to the most recent version of this section that we had discussed, and he got it right.
Yeah, I found that section in looking at sections down the road here when we get into this. I couldn't find the site before, and I was like, well, it's got to be, it exists somewhere if it's been deleted otherwise. And happened to stumble upon it in another revision that we had made further on down the road.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see this site, maybe not at tonight's meeting, but at the next meeting, because I think it's actually towards the end is where I ended up seeing it. So, okay, that's...
And number 8 is down toward the bottom of page 3. There's a couple instances where the city attorney, you may recall, said that include or including doesn't need the phrase but not limited to afterwards, because
Right.
it's actually already in the code. It's not just legal precedent.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So that's items 8 and 9.
Okay.
All right.
So, and does the red or the blue, there's no difference between what's red and what's blue. Is that right?
The blue actually is a specific citation. So if you're on the website and you click on the blue currently, it'll link you to that health.
That's a hyperlink to the state code.
Yeah, it's a hyperlink.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I could have gotten rid of all the blues, but it would have created some.
Got notes.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, no.
It'll end up being black and white eventually.
But yeah, it's good for us to know
Yeah.
that you can go there.
Provide a little bit of context, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, I want to make sure I get this other. There were two, including but not limited to, right?
One of them.
That's correct. There are 4 and 5 lines up from the bottom of page 3.
Oh yeah, I got one, but now I found the other.
All right, good deal. Okay.
And number 10 actually relates back to the conflict with state code in terms of the density bonuses. And that should be part of the deeper dive that we look at in addition, in conjunction with item 5.
Make a note.
It's the same problem there. We have a lot of, well, actually, no, this is in addition to that. At one point, Lucas and I looked at it and we said, why is there a range in moderate income and a range in density bonus factor? And it turns out that if you go percent by percent, that it actually lines up, and that's just fine. But it's still in conflict with the state code that says 25% for everything.
Right.
We should take item 5, I think, and item 10 as part of a deep dive on this section. And item 11 is just, there were some missing footnotes. And I know we put it in once, but it didn't make it into this copy.
Okay. See the notes. Five to 6. Wait, not 1 through 4 are missing?
The footnote, the notes are there at the bottom of the table, but the references to notes 1 through 4 are missing from the table.
Oh, from the table. I see what you're saying. Huh.
And I caught it right off. Density bonus factor is note 1. If you look at the column heads, qualifying resident is note 2. Moderate income is note 4. I don't remember where note 3 goes.
Okay.
But there's a version of this section out there, Lucas, that has those references in it.
Okay.
And 9,
We have the,
909A1.
there's notes at the top of the next page, but that's not, you're talking about referencing.
Yeah, those are the notes that will in the online code be at the bottom of the table.
Right.
But we had some additional references included, is what you're saying, right?
I'm saying if you look through the table right now, you don't find anything calling out those notes.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So those call outs, we have them.
Okay. Okay. Now I get what you're saying. Yeah. References.
So those will be updated for the next review.
And then on page 9, on 102909A1, about the third line, we had put in something like the Farm Employees Affordable Housing Act or some such, which was really unnecessary. The call out here will take you right to it. It just got a little
Yep.
wordy, and Lucas fixed that.
That's right. Okay.
And then item 13, the Health and Safety Code. It looks like a link, but I'm not sure. I could pull up the code. Come on. Should have done that before. N2 909A2. Okay, in the online code, health and safety code is all underlined and it's in blue. So we can delete comment item number 13. That was just
Yep.
something in the printing of the packet, I guess, where health was not underlined.
Now remember, we're transposing all this information from individual. So sometimes when this stuff gets copied over, we've got to make sure everything's highlighted and color coordinated accordingly.
Yeah, and if you could see all of our document files behind the screen there, we're up to Rev 6 or 7 on some of these sections.
Yeah.
As we keep
Not
going through them
surprising.
and finding things,
Right.
we'll change the revision level on an individual section.
Yep.
It will never show up in the packet.
Yeah, you're seeing just the one, the final version. Okay, so 14 is page 9, 10-2.909.
A3,
3. Health and safety code shall be or should read health and safety code section. Oh, so it doesn't reference the section.
yeah, in fact, in A2, it doesn't reference a section. It just references the entire health and safety code. We might want to look at that.
From parent.
Okay. All right. And I'll make that note for the one above it as well.
Okay. And then we still ran across a few of these, including but not limited to. There's one on page 10 in paragraph C.
C. All right.
As we go, if you found other corrections that should be made, we should pick them up as we go, page by page here.
All right, moving on to 16, which we would move on to page 11, which lines 3 and 4 exception to allow boring or other modes of crossing the creek setback area with proper environmental review. Should read exceptions may be made to allow boring or other modes of crossing the creek setback area with proper environmental review.
Yeah, we need a verb in that sentence. Even if it's passive mode, we need a verb.
I would recommend that we say an exception to allow boring or other modes of crossing the creekside setback area may be considered by the Planning Commission. Because it would need design review, right, or something. What would it need? What would these improvements require? Design review?
I don't know if it's a design review or a variance or something. I'm not sure at this point.
It wouldn't be design review, because if the boring is taking place, that's not something that's visual.
Like a permit.
Maybe a zone clearance.
I would want Planning Commission to consider. I would want to say may be considered. I don't want to say it's a-okay to do it. I want to say may be considered, and I would prefer to say have that review. This kind of exception would be quite significant, and we would want to make sure we had the technical justification for this with technical studies, and I would highly recommend we say an exception to allow blah 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 blah. With crossing the creekside setback area may be considered by the Planning Commission with proper environmental review.
Now here's the challenge with that, and maybe we have a quick discussion about this. If you put Planning Commission right here, we already have a section that identifies when Planning Commission reviews certain items, and when the director reviews certain items, and when certain items just go directly to forward to plan check.
Okay.
I think the issue that I've seen in portions of this code is direct references to who has authority without giving that kind of central location of how that's handled. We looked at that, I want to say, in that first cut of errata, and kind of went through Planning Commission and director and other, I think it was even HPC consideration to some degree.
Yeah. Oh no, I would.
City Council, I think, as well.
I would definitely agree that, I mean, if we were to make a change here and similar things elsewhere in the code, it should all be collected and put in the proper slots in the summary of what Planning Commission or the director review.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying, I see it as important to say that it may be considered. I wouldn't want to give any indication that this is perfectly fine.
Okay, maybe considered still leaves us in kind of a gray area. Are you saying that the meaning here that you're looking for is that exceptions to allow boring requires Planning Commission approval? Just saying.
I mean, it should
if we may consider it and we decide not to consider it, where does that leave the applicant?
Well, because if we list this as an exception, there's no exception in here now. So if we list it as an exception, they could apply for it. Maybe we need to figure out under what kind of a permit they would apply for this. Is it a variance? Maybe it would be treated as a variance. But probably not. I don't think variance findings would be.
I would probably stay away from a variance for something like this.
What's that?
I would stay away from a variance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It feels like because if you're looking for exceptions to this rule, you may as well look at changing the rule versus some sort of limitation. I mean, that's typically a variance, is that limitation to what the standard rules are.
Well, the first part of that paragraph makes very clear things that you're not allowed to do. So the second part of the paragraph speaks to exceptions, and we need to have some basis for how you ask for an exception and who decides whether you get it, right?
Yeah, with proper environmental review is...
What does that even mean? I mean, does that mean that the environmental review says there's no significant impacts? I mean, I'm not sure what that term even really means either.
Right.
You know, does it mean they can mitigate impacts? But then when you look at the mitigations, I mean, those mitigations have impacts that would not be acceptable.
Now,
A lot of this is so judgmental, and it's based on and the technical review is certainly a big part of it, but there could be other considerations that aren't acceptable to the community that need that need review above staff level. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so I want to remind the commission, when we had this discussion, I want to say at the last meeting, this was the language that was agreed upon.
I know, but not exactly. Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, the only thing is I agree with the proper environmental review. It is vague, but I think we built that vagueness in with the assumption that as an application like this was to come in, we would then evaluate what sort of technical studies were necessary to address this concern.
But the way it's worded, we're saying they can do an exception. You know, that hey, just provide the technical studies and do the environmental review, and the exception is fine. That's basically what we're saying. And I'm saying that this kind of exception deserves basically a public hearing with community input and review by either commission or council or something like that, and that it is a discretionary review. It should not be, okay, provide the technical reports and you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's what I'm
saying. I agree with Kathy.
A ministerial decision assumes that you're meeting the requirements, and it's not clear from these two lines what exactly the requirements are. So that means it should be discretionary.
I think it needs to be discretionary. I think it's very important to have an exception be discretionary. Yes.
I agree with Kathy, and based on our previous discussion at our last commission meeting or the one before, I was under the impression also that we were going to have discretionary review because it's something we hope it doesn't happen. And under, certain circumstances, it may be, the last resort or way to get utilities somewhere to go under the creek. Ideally, we don't want it to happen. And so that's why I think we need a review. And then also when we say proper environmental review, what does that mean? Do we need to be more specific there? Like who determines what that is? Are there some guidelines that they would have to follow? Because it is a little vague.
Maybe we should hold this and let staff look at whether or not there are guidelines in state code that should be met. I don't know, maybe public resources code. I don't really know where to look for that.
Yeah, and you could have proper environmental review with mitigations that fully mitigate any potential impact, but it's certainly a possibility that when you look at the mitigations, you go, well, that's not
Maybe it doesn't meet certain criteria or aesthetic or whatever that the city of Ojai is looking for or is in the general plan, and it's not servicing the community, or there could be an alternative that's not being presented. I mean, I have a feeling this is hopefully going to be a very rare, if ever used, but when it does, I think it needs scrutiny.
Yeah.
Lucas, does CEQA play into this?
I think that's the reason for environmental review consideration. Why does my camera keep cutting out here?
But again, you could have an environmental review that is thorough, complete, fully discloses the impacts, and comes up with mitigation measures that that as maybe they have aesthetic issues for the community. Maybe, I mean, I have no idea really in terms of specifics, but I'm just saying adequate environmental review is not the be all and end all. It's somebody's got to call a judgment on whether the environmental review is correct and whether the mitigations are acceptable to the community.
Yeah, one piece to this is that you could fold into this if you're looking at discretionary review to hang your hat on is as a DRP requirement. By having a DRP requirement, it's falling into that threshold of a requirement for it to go forward to planning commission for consideration.
In addition to environmental,
would then lend itself for the review, the discretionary consideration, the technical reports, and whether or not it's in the SQL box, meaning the project is and has to go through the SQL process, whether there's mitigation that comes and falls into place there, or it's out of the SQL box and it's exempt and through proper exemptions and channels. That would then be evaluated.
It could be that too, yes.
Yeah.
And that would initially be a staff evaluation then, right?
Well, a staff evaluation and then procedures and process moving forward, certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe we should
lend
say
itself through conceptual review as well. It could be tied to something, a larger project, and this is a part of that larger project. There's a lot of different scenarios that could play out.
right. I think the concept review is an excellent idea because we would get preliminary review of what their intention is. And at that point, we could weigh in.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Giving some of that early direction as it relates to that project.
I would think they would appreciate that as well.
well, then maybe we should change this to say an exception to allow boring, so on, requires a concept review and may require a design review permit.
Yeah, if we use
And leave out the words about environmental review, because that will be a part of it in either case, right?
Right.
Yep.
That would be required no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
If we're using environmental or concept review, and we're using DRP, I think we should be following that same format of if it's a concept review, we cite that code section. If it's within the DRP, we cite that section as well.
That's Article 20, I remember. I don't remember concept reviews, but
Well, I would prefer design review. Are you saying DR? What are you saying? Design review?
DRP,
Yeah,
a
DRP,
CR, a CR or a DRP.
What's a
concept
CR?
review, CR.
Oh,
Concept review
Okay.
and
I
may
mean,
require a design review permit.
yeah, I mean, the concept review does not require, I mean, we comment on concept review, but we don't make a decision. And we don't have any findings or anything like that. At least with design review, we have findings and we would actually make a decision that could be appealed to council.
I like the idea of both.
Or both would be, yeah, oh, yeah. I just would I would want, right, either both
Okay.
or just design review.
Or the DRP, right.
Thinking about it some more, concept reviews tend to come about in a case where a design review permit will eventually be needed and the applicant is looking for advice prior to requesting the DRP.
Right.
Right.
And that would be
And so-
fine. Yeah. And that
So
would,
if we refer only to DRP here, then that leaves the applicant with the choice of coming forward with a concept review if they wish, but it still means the planning commission would look at it and it would include environmental review.
right. Yeah. I'd be happy with that.
Okay, so if we change it to read an exception to allow boring or other modes of crossing the creekside setback area requires a design review permit.
Okay, fine. Yep. Straight and to the point. That's good.
Because we have procedures for that already.
Yes, that's
Right.
good.
All right.
And we would automatically have to do the environmental review. Okay.
That would be under Article 20, and we'll we can make the right words to go with that.
Right. And just one other comment under E, going down a couple more lines there to E, subsection E. It says proposed development. And I thought maybe we should, isn't that applying to adjacent, any proposed development that's adjacent to the creekside setback? Because we're not allowing development in the creekside setback.
Right, and this is, the whole article is about creekside development standards, so it speaks specifically
You think, oh, so you don't think we
to
need
parcels
to,
that abut a creekside.
okay, so you don't think we need to add that? You think it's self?
I think it's
Maybe it's
covered.
redundant. Yeah.
Okay, alrighty.
All right. Okay, so that covers 16. Let's move on to 17. So we're on page 12, 10-2.1004, subset F2.
That's more errata.
I have, and after this, Lucas, I still have another couple of things under the at the top under creekside setback.
Okay.
Oh, back on page 11?
12.
Oh, on 12, okay. Go ahead, Kay.
Oh, okay. It's just some wording changes again, because once I go and look at what we kind of, I know we already discussed this and we did come up with some kind of wording. So it's subsection F2, concrete channels. It's at the top of the page of 12. Concrete channels and other mechanical stabilization measures should not be allowed unless no other alternative exists. I would go as determined by the Public Works Director. And I would be happy with just saying that, but if you wanted to go on, we could say, and supported by engineering technical review, technical studies or something like that.
Well, I'm happy to simplify the wording there and just say as determined by the Public Works Director.
I would be happy with that.
That would require some sort of engineering analysis, I'm sure.
Right.
If only by the director.
Right. I would be personally happy with that. So
Okay.
I just
We could just delete as prepared by a licensed engineer.
yes.
Okay with everybody?
I'm thinking about that one. So help me understand why you're deleting the prepared by a licensed engineer.
Well, the wording is just a little weird. I mean, I think we were saying initially, there would presumably be some technical studies, an engineering study, but the determination would be by the Public Works Director. I just didn't like it as it was worded. Unless
maybe we reword it, but I think that you still need to say as prepared by a licensed engineer, because the engineer is the one who's licensed to do the study. I mean, it just feels more complete and
Maybe,
no question.
yeah. Maybe we've just got a couple of wrong words in there. If we said as determined by a licensed engineer and approved by the Public Works Director. Would that work?
Reviewed or both.
Because you want a licensed engineer to make the determination that no alternative exists.
Right.
Well, they're providing the technical evaluation. So,
Right.
I mean, I would still want to say as determined by the Public Works Director and maybe and supported by and supported by a licensed engineer study or licensed engineer evaluation.
Because it says as prepared, so there's an assumption that the plans and or the study is being submitted.
Yeah, I agree with you. The word's kind of clunky there.
It's a little clunky.
No other alternative exists as prepared by. That doesn't quite ring true. I think we kind of understand the thought we're trying to get to here. We want a licensed engineer to make a technical analysis, and we want the Public Works Director to approve that determination.
Yes.
Okay, we could say, what about if we, unless no other alternative exists, as supported by a licensed engineer evaluation.
And approved by?
And as determined, and as approved by, or as determined by, either way, either one.
Public Works Director.
The Public Works Director, yeah.
Okay, as supported by a licensed engineer evaluation and approved by the Public Works Director.
Okay, and approved by, yes, good. Yep, I like that.
I can live with that.
Yeah, so essentially what it is when the engineer is turning in his plans, and for if he had to put, or she had to put a concrete channel, there would be a notation that they explored this, or due to expansive soils or poor drainage, whatever it is, and the degree of slope, the only alternative was this.
Right.
We conducted these studies or explored such and such.
That's what you'd
But-
expect from the
Of course, they're going to sign and stamp it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Just thinking it out.
And under G, the next line, I would just cross off frontage. I think we could just say public access and visibility to creeks may be provided through the use of roads outside the creekside setback area. I don't think we need frontage.
Well, frontage just refers to something that's going to be adjacent to or like running parallel to the creek.
Yeah, I don't feel strongly about it either way. The frontage
Yeah.
was in the original text.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
you
know.
know what the intention is when they say frontage and why they're
Okay.
saying it.
Oh, it's not a big thing, so,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
And just one more thing. I'm sorry. I feel so bad taking time.
This is what we're here for, Kay.
Under I, it's just kind of weird. We say where streets are not used, public access should be provided at least every 300 feet. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of weird. I mean, we should definitely be providing that. I just don't know.
I think maybe streets there refers back to the frontage roads in a previous paragraph.
Right. Well, it goes on to say, public access to the trail should be, where streets are not used, we still need to provide public access, I assume through a sidewalk or some kind of trail or something. But we say should be provided every 300 feet. I just thought that was a little, I don't know, it seems pretty.
It's similar to something we see along the beach, I think, is that
Yeah.
there's access between
Yeah.
parcels or
Okay.
whatever to get down
Okay.
to the water.
Okay. All right. So it's a goal and we may or may not ever be able to do it, but it's fine. Okay.
Yeah, it may not necessarily apply to the city of Ojai.
What
Maybe it does. I don't know. I guess where did it come from?
kind of yard, whose yards are we walking through every 300 feet to get to?
Right. I'm trying to think of it. And cul-de-sacs, I mean, yes,
Yeah.
we do have some, but not a lot.
I don't know. It just seems a little funny to me.
But it's basically saying, to allow access for the public.
Yeah.
to the
It's
creek.
not commanding that it be every 300 feet.
Yeah. So maybe it says, it says should.
Should be.
Should, not shall.
Yeah. Right.
Should be provided at least every 300 feet. Maybe something like where applicable or where,
It's okay.
maybe just leave that out. Yeah. May occur at the end of cul-de-sacs. I don't know. Maybe just leave it.
It's fine to leave it. I just
Yeah.
caught my eye to
Get it though. Like
every time.
Yeah.
Every time I go through this, I see stuff. So sorry.
Well, no, but you read
That's
it.
what
and you
we're
go,
all
what
doing,
does that
Kay.
mean? Or how does it apply?
Every time we go through it, we find something.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, the next item is 18 on the email, and that has to do with the very last line on page 12, and then the lines at the top of page 13. And I think, to me, this sounds like something that we should leave out of this text amendment and put into our deep dive.
That's what Lucas had said at the beginning, that essentially that should have been highlighted in yellow as he had done for some of the other items.
Okay.
So I think so you're correct. That would be the deep
Get
dive.
toward the end of the email, there's some places where it says delete the highlighting.
Oh,
That could well be wrong because Lucas put it there deliberately for this review.
okay.
Okay.
Oh, so you're talking about the,
No explanation of what
And
might be
okay.
Where it says unless exempt, but it doesn't explain what that means
okay,
or where to find the guidelines for it.
okay, and I agree.
And
It
that
should,
sounds like a deep dive to me.
right, and my only thought about that, and again, deep dive is fine. I thought the flip side of that, talking about exemptions, is talking more clearly about what's actually subject to hillside development standards, which is more what I would like to see. I don't know I don't know where we say something is subject to a hillside development standard. Like what kind of slope?
Now we'd have to slide back into the code again because we have 1101 here and 1103, but we don't have.
Yeah, I think it's based on a percentage of the lot.
It is. Oh, we do have something. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, I think I don't want to get into this right now, but because we're going to talk about the hillside again, right?
Right. Yeah. 10.2.1102 says the standards in this article apply to all subdivisions, uses, and development on slopes of 15% or greater.
There we go, 15%.
Okay. Okay.
That's already in the code from 2004.
Okay. So I don't know what would be exempt, but maybe there would be something.
I don't know. It just because the words unless exempt were in the code, I felt like maybe we need to do that deep dive and figure out,
What would that?
we cite something that's a guideline, or do we just delete those words?
Okay.
Yeah. Good
And I
call.
think for now, for this text amendment, we delete the words and we do a deep dive on that paragraph.
Yeah, I'd like to, I would be very happy to go back to the hillside development standards to do a bit deeper dive, because I've really thought about ways to flesh out the provisions in the section on intention. So yeah, there's more to talk about on the hillside stuff, I think.
Okay. Sounds more and more like a deep dive.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was
All right.
18, right?
That is 1819
Yeah, now,
is page 14. So let's jump to 14.
right. And I presume that all the commissioners have just read this through once. So if we're skipping over something, you recognize that all we've done is put in the name of a section, or we've put in title and chapter and section or whatever, an article with the name of the article.
Okay.
So those are all pretty simple, and it's just another one of those global changes that we agreed to several meetings ago.
Yep.
Can I ask Commissioner Nolan, so my thought about going through this whole, I mean, it's a substantial section on the landscaping, and there's
Right. And
areas that are very, very detailed and so forth. So this is in the realm of the deeper dive.
I think so.
Are you happy with this section of the code, the landscape standards? Do you feel
a lot of it is good and it's up to date, but I did make some notes, and I intentionally wrote next to them, that it would be for a deeper dive. And I would just kind of generally, at some point tonight, maybe mention some of the items. But I mean, I know we're not going to be going into it, but I do have a lot of notes. And I think where there's some possible discrepancies and missing information, but I guess what I could do is, as we kind of go through it, and if I have something on a page, I could point it out, Lucas, and if you want to just circle it or highlight it, where I have a question, And then I could generally just give my broad stroke notes as to what I think we need to
I think that'd be
Would that
great.
be
That'll
good?
be a guide to our deeper dives.
Yeah, a guide to the deeper dive, exactly.
good.
I'm sure I might be missing something, but generally I do have some, I think, worthy comments.
Okay.
Terrific.
Okay.
I haven't heard any unworthy comments from you yet.
Me neither.
It's been 4 years.
Oh, thank you.
All right,
Yeah,
moving on to 20. So we're on page 14 still, and then it's 10-2.1202D, line 6, subsection
Mr. Rada. Yeah.
should read subsection B. Where's that at? Oh yeah, okay, I see that.
Where are you at? Subsection B? Oh,
This is in subparagraph D. It's just an incorrect reference at the
oh,
end.
D.
What number are we on, Steve? I don't.
This
I
is
want-
page 14, and we're about a third of the way down from the top.
Oh, yeah, but what number on your comments? Is it?
Number 20.
20.
Okay, okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I had forgot to check off.
19 was just a missing parentheses. And 20 was a incorrect reference. 21, maybe Kathy can explain this to us and we don't need to do anything with it.
That would be lovely. I tried to look it up.
Okay.
This
So
totalizer says to me, it talks about cumulative water flow or something.
So we're
But
on
it's-
page 17, Steve?
No, we're on page 17.
Page 17.
Okay, let me get to the right place.
And it's about 3 lines down from the top.
Okay.
The word totalizer appears once in the municipal code, and that's here.
Sounds like it's from a Batman movie.
Yeah, let me read this real quick.
I love that. I'm going to use that totalizer.
You know what? This is
That's,
interesting because I've gone through the state code numerous times. Number one, we had a subcommittee with the Planning Commission when we were in 2010 that I chaired to go over the state code when it became a little more stringent.
That was a
I
state
still
code
don't
word.
remember this totalizer, and I've gone over it numerous times since. So I'm assuming what they mean by that is, so normally, you've got your regular water meter that's hooked up to your water purveyor, and they're monitoring your water use. In addition, with this MWELO, depending on if it's a commercial property or the size of a residential one, you have to put in a landscape meter. So it's an additional meter after your water purveyor's meter. And it's going to be monitoring like how much water you're using in the landscape rather than the entire property. So just for
Oh.
like irrigation use, not including, domestic use or.
Wow.
Okay,
So I
so we're,
believe that's what they're referring to, but it is kind of a fun word. And I don't remember
Yeah.
reading this one before.
I like the Batman reference, though. It reminds me of a conversation between Batman and Robin. Robin says, the Batmobile won't start. And Batman says, well, check the battery. And Robin says, what's a turry?
Oh, because of the bat.
A bat turry.
Yeah, that's cool. Right, well, we might have to start using the totalizer.
Yeah.
It sounds,
But you're
Yeah.
saying you think totalizer means a separate water meter for the irrigated area?
well, I do know, having produced these plans, that on many of my projects, I have to put a landscape water meter into the design. So this is an additional piece of equipment aside from your purveyor's water meter that's located at the street. This will come after that, and it's measuring the flow of water just in the irrigation. So it's the domestic water is separated out. So it sounds like that's what it's referring to.
I don't know. Like I say, this is the only place in the code where the word appears. Maybe we need to do a deep dive on that and leave totalizer to another review.
So basically what they are saying is, so the totalizer, and it's funny because I haven't run across this, because if I break this down,
Oh, the landscape water meter That's
It's
it.
connected to a totalizer, so it must be, it's a device that's probably wired in, and it records the water use. So that's interesting. I haven't run
That's
across
different
that.
from what a water meter does?
So it sounds like it's a device wired to the water meter that actually records the water use.
Sounds like a
Probably is-
landscape water meter.
Well, there's a meter, but it sounds like it's an additional device. And maybe it's wired into, we'll have to do some research on it. It may be,
Lucas, you said you looked it up?
Yeah, I mean, I found a definition for it, but it's just,
what does it say?
it says a totalizer is a measurement feature included with some types of meters which stores or maintains a record of the accumulated quantity of some substance over time.
Okay.
Totalizers can be
So
reset to
it's a
start at
cumulative measure.
in time or
Right.
after a certain amount of time has been completed.
That's the total amount of water being used over
Right.
time.
And so apparently from reading this and from my experience, when you're specifying the landscape water meter, if you want, you want to make sure the manufacturer has the totalizer included. It sounds like some of
Okay.
them don't.
Can we just add then, if that
I would just leave
word
it.
works, and I'm happy with that, can we just add totalizer to the definitions section and use the
In the-
reference that Lucas found?
Right, because the reference, the landscape water meter definition is in the state definitions. And so we're just adding an additional definition to define what the totalizer is. And you can always be more stringent and not less. And so we're being more stringent by giving more information.
Right.
So, yeah, I just got educated.
So that doesn't require a deep dive. It just requires adding a definition to 10.2.3602T.
Right, so
Or
that would be under
totalizer.
the T's, yeah. Add
Great.
totalizer. Right here.
Okay, item 22 is on page 20. It's just another typo. Something lost in the transmission of text from one place to another.
Oh, I see it. 20.
Page 20. Last line.
It's the second line down on page 20.
Ah, there it is.
Just a missing dash.
Oh, I see what you did. Okay.
All right.
Can I just ask a question? And maybe either Lucas or Kathy Nolan could answer. So we talk about landscape concept plans. What do we, so which, and then we talk about some other kind of landscape plan. Landscape.
This like says the precise plans.
Oh, okay. So
Yes.
what kind of landscape plan do we get, for example, with design review, like we got on the house on San Ramon Way? What was that?
That's more of a concept plan.
Concept. Okay.
That word precise, I'm assuming, is referring to more like a construction document.
Yes, it'll have a lot more detail to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Specific placement of the plants, that kind of thing, you mean?
Well, even with the concept plan, you're going to see the placement of the
Plants.
plants, but you're not going to necessarily see where the irrigation's going. You're not going to see the calculations that the
Right.
landscape architect
Oh,
put together
okay.
that they're meeting the state guidelines.
Yeah. And you're not
All that detail is rolled into the plan check portion.
right.
So for us, we get the concept plan, generally speaking, and then before they get their building permit, the applicant would need to do the more precise plan that goes through building plan check. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
Usually after the DRP is
And
awarded.
again, yeah. And there are also standards for how much landscaping area requires a landscaping plan,
Right.
that sort of thing. So
Right.
it's
Triggering.
already in the code.
Right. Right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. That was 22. Moving on to 23.
23, and this will occur a couple more times. The numbering of subsections, first is a lowercase letter, A, B, C, D, lowercase. Then it should be an Arabic number. Then it should be, the next level down is a capitalized letter. And the final one that we're using is lowercase Roman numerals. And so you shouldn't have parenthesis I following a 2. It should be a capital A following a 2. That's what item 23 is about. And I don't know if the people that put the code together for us pick up that sort of thing or not. Lucas, do you know?
No.
Okay.
No, it's important that we catch those here. That's a part of the errata with
Yeah.
stuff like this. But I'm just trying to see. I'm on page 20. I'm not seeing that here. Where am I? Why am I missing?
Okay.
it?
3 lines from the top, there is a paren 2 end parens. And the first subparagraph is a Roman numeral. It's not a capital A.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So 1 through 6 there
Oh, I
should,
see. Yeah. Yeah.
should be A through F,
Ah,
capitalized.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
okay. Good catch, Steve.
Yeah, Steve's so good at this. I'll
I
tell you.
know.
No, I helped proofread some technical textbooks in graduate school. And you either get it right or you die from an overdose of subscripts and superscripts and stuff like that.
Right.
These are all physics textbooks.
No, I give you credit, Chirkwell. So you certainly
I
catch
know,
these
he's so
things where I
good.
would gloss over them. That's the point of the errata.
Yep. Now, the next one's page 21. And I said to do,
So, hey, hang on one second. Going back to that one.
yes,
Doesn't it starts with the lowercase a, then it goes to 1, 2, and then it goes to the Roman numerals. So you're saying to go from 1, 2 back to A?
no. The subparagraph under an Arabic number should be a capital letter. The subparagraph under a capital letter should be a Roman numeral lowercase.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So we missed
That's-
the. Yeah.
That's the way the rest of the code is set up.
Okay, so it's a lowercase a, then a 1 and a 2, and then a capital A?
Correct. So where it says 2I right now, it should
Right.
say 2 capital A.
Right.
Okay. 2 capital A, and then number 2 would be capital B, etc.
Right, down through capital F. Then it goes back to B, which is a higher level than the 2. So after B, you get a 1 again.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Cool.
On page 21, you had highlighted review authority, Lucas.
Mm-hmm. So the question is
Who is that?
who is the review authority? It's general. It doesn't give us specifics.
Well, it depends on whether it's a concept plan or a precise plan, and the review authority is set accordingly. I
You need a
don't
landscape.
have a problem with that because that's pretty standard language as long as it's clear.
Well, if the review
Well,
authority is
absolutely.
identified elsewhere,
It's not?
I say if it is,
If it is, yes.
then we just leave the words there and that's fine.
Yes.
But if it isn't,
But if it isn't, then we
If it isn't, then we need to define it here.
right.
Who's the landscaping authority that would do this? That would determine landscaping development standards.
Well, wouldn't that be somebody in the planning doing like plan check or?
Oh yeah, that would. Well, it would be the planner reviewing.
Planner? I would believe.
reviewing the standards to ensure
Yeah.
consistency.
Right.
And for a concept plan, once it came to us, I mean, if there was a lesser amount of landscaping determined appropriate, that should be in the staff report, and we would know about it, and we would have further review.
So
About
review authority in that case, we're saying is the planning department.
originally, but it
Yeah, it starts there.
starts there.
It
Yeah.
starts there. Yeah.
So maybe review
Should
authority
we
is
put
okay.
planning department in place of review authority?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, but if it's a concept review, then we're the review authority, and we would ultimately oversee. I mean, we would ultimately look at everything that staff had looked at. So we would be the review authority for a concept review.
Well,
Correct.
I don't know on a concept review if we would be in a position to determine whether or not a lesser amount of landscaping would be appropriate.
Well, but we would be looking at what if staff did determine a lesser amount was appropriate, they would presumably just, have some kind of a little discussion in the staff report, and it would be up to us to say to agree or not agree.
But it would initially be a staff determination.
Yes.
So maybe I've got a question here. So this is the landscape development standards. And so that's I think it's more generalized. And I think that's where you're going with it, Kathy, that it could potentially be concept review or DRP.
Well, this is basically saying the
Is that correct?
operational standards for landscape development standards. This is the operational function of it, how the operations work to determine
Exactly.
standards. Right. So who is the body that does that? And if
Right.
that's planning. You said the
I
planning.
think it's the planning department.
Yeah, then I think we should list them.
I think it is.
And if it's a concept review, there's no decision being made on the project per se. If it's a
By anyone.
DRP, then that determination by staff will be part of the package for planning commission review.
Oh, well, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's what I was talking about. We would, as a part of design review, we would get for a structure or a building or whatever, we would get we would get the concept landscape plan, but but you're right, it would be a part of a DRP.
So in this case, the review authority, I think, really is the planning department.
Right.
I would say for consistency purposes, we call it the director, because the director is defined
Right.
in this code.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Good.
Saying the director then includes but not limited to all of y'all.
Correct.
Okay,
Write that down here. All right. So moving on to 25, which is on page 22, 10-2.1206, sub B1, line 1, add definition of the acronym WU calls.
Can you spell it out in
I
there?
had to search for that one.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like water use calculation. I forgot what the O stands for. I think it's for landscape species. That we can just look it right up and. I'm so used to saying wool calls. I was.
Steve even has
It's
it
right
here.
there.
It's
Water usage classification of landscape species.
Okay, there you go.
The O is of.
Yeah, I would.
Thank you.
I would prefer to just have it right there in parens, and so it's very clear. You don't have to
Write it out and then put WU calls behind
Right.
it
That's
as
what I
an
would.
acronym.
That's if I were a user, that's what I would prefer.
Great, that's fine with me.
Well, we're looking for clarity. So
Is it used anywhere else in the code? I don't remember seeing it anywhere else.
wool calls.
Yeah.
I mean, basically all the hydrozone and is based on the wool calls. So I don't know, the word may not come up again, but it is the classification system.
Yeah. I think if we just, I don't recall seeing it anywhere else in the code. I could search that quickly.
It may not be.
Spell it out and then put Wu calls and friends. That's consistent.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Because right below it says California Department of Water Resources, parenthesis DWR.
Right.
Well, it
Yeah.
also shows up in 10.2.12.30, just uses the acronym again, talking about plant material shall comply with.
Yeah.
So if we write it out the first time in 1206, then we can just use the acronym thereafter.
Right. And the
At
acronym
12:30.
is definitely used in the trade. You never hear people saying the whole, water use
Right.
classification of landscape species, but it's good to have it there too.
All right. Moving on to pages 22 and 23. This is number 26.
Yep. And that's more of the protocol on naming subsections.
I see.
The bottom of page 22, the 1I should be 1A.
Yep.
And then the top of page 23, that looks like it's subsections to the last paragraph on page 22. I may be wrong. What is this 1208?
One or more of the following. So it has, well, these should be then Roman numerals, correct? If we're
That's
following-
correct. The A through F, I think, should be Roman numerals.
Okay.
1208. There we are.
Is a subsection of the Roman numeral 1I?
Yes. The lowercase letters there should be uppercase letters.
Got it.
I'm sorry. 1I. Yes, they should be uppercase letters, right.
Okay.
That's what item 26 says. Make those uppercase letters.
And just a quick question. I just saw this on page 22 at the top, the last sentence of the first paragraph. It says ETWU must be below the MAWA, and ETWU is explained as estimated total water use, but there's no explanation for MAWA. You guys know
And
what
that's maximum allowed water.
is? That pretty common? Would people know what that is?
Yeah, and both of those are used when you're doing the hydrozone plant, but it should be in the definitions. I'm surprised that it's
Right. MAWA and ETWU, I think, are both in 10.2.3602.
Yeah, they are. I'm just wondering if we should spell out what MAWA is to be consistent with everything else.
Yeah.
Sure.
I always like to
Right.
spell it out.
Yeah, the maximum applied water allowance.
Got it.
Yeah, estimated total water use is there before the acronym.
Yep, it is.
Yeah, but you're right. That would make it consistent and complete.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a good catch.
What section is that in? I'm lost.
Maybe MAWA is maximum annual water allowance?
Yeah, it has it right in the definition, Steve. If you go back to the state
okay.
definitions,
It's in
it's
36.
maximum applied.
Water allowance. There we go. I was like,
Yeah, maximum applied water allowance.
And then in the sentence right below
Fine.
it says, in calculating the maximum applied water allowance. So to be consistent, we could just take that out and put in calculating the the MAWA.
Yeah, the MAWA. That's true. Like we said earlier, like Steve had said,
once
spell
we-
it out, and then after that you can use the acronym. Yeah, good
Right.
call.
Right, just like was done with ETWU and with
Exactly.
evapotranspiration adjustment factor, ETAF,
Right.
just above in that same paragraph.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
page are you guys on?
22, and we're up at the top.
Oh, at the top, okay.
Under A.
Okay,
You see a couple places there where
gotcha.
a factor was spelled out and then the acronym. That was done twice. We're just saying spell out MAWA before you put the acronym in.
Yeah,
Yeah. For consistency. Yeah.
Okay?
All right. Good catch. So we just talked about 26. Moving on to 27. It's a renumbering. Here's what it looks like. Page 23. 10-2.1208.
Yep.
Oh,
Most all of page 23 just needs to have all the paragraph numbers conform to the normal protocol.
A1. Okay.
And I have a lot of notes on these pages, but I think let's go once again. If we go through Steve's first, and I can go back and
Yeah.
give
Like
you a
Sunset Western Climate Zone.
Yeah.
Oh, use the Sunset Western Climate Zone maps.
I guess it's maps instead of a system, but I don't know. Kathy?
It is a map. It's a map. So it has like basically the whole Western United States broken up into climate zones, and you find your zone on a map.
Okay.
Kind of like the USDA zones
Sure.
as well. It's similar.
It helps you figure out what kind of plants would work here, right?
Yeah, like we're
Yeah.
zone 20. It's the sunset zone. Yeah, that means
You know that by yes.
Can
Not
that
drive-through?
can that Sunset Western Climate Zone map be found somewhere, or do you just need to go search the internet on that term, or what?
You can search the internet, but probably most people are going to know where to find it. If they don't have a book, you can go online and just look it up.
You mean most landscape architects will know?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, even in even in graduate school programs, the Sunset Western Garden book is actually a textbook.
Oh,
That's
okay.
how good that book is.
Wow.
And it's available to the public too. And like most nurseries have, a lot of homeowners have it.
Yeah.
But that's where the sunset
Okay.
zones come from.
I
Yeah.
had one.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good information, but yeah.
So we don't really need a citation. You just search on that term and you'll find it.
Yeah, the person who's designing is going to just go, oh, hey, I've got my book, or I'm going to look it up. They're not going to
Okay.
question what that is. Most
Your landscape architecture will already have it.
Yeah, and the contractors are they're going to know that too. And like I said, a lot of homeowners even know. I don't think it's an issue. Yeah.
All right. That's 27.
Yes. Yeah.
Moving on to 28. It's the renumbering once again.
That's renumbering, right?
Um,
29, we don't need a citation for Sunset Western Climate Zone maps.
okay.
Unless you guys think you really need that. I mean, you can refer to the book. That's where else you would find it, or to a link to their a website. But you think that's overkill?
But an applicant who sees that is going to turn to the landscape architect and say, what does that mean? And the landscape architect will know.
The applicants don't look at this,
Right.
to be honest.
Okay.
Oh, here, you take care of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Preparing a landscape plan, it would be pretty hard for anybody like me.
Amen. The next one is toward the bottom of the page there, Cal IPC. We had suggested putting in an acronym, but it's still not clear where you would find any of that. Kathy, is that another one of those that you just look at, you just search on it?
So that's the California Invasive Plant Council, and you can just do a search and it'll pop right up. There's actually these plant councils throughout the country. I don't know, not every state has it, but California has one that's very active.
Well, we're
And
very
you-
sensitive to invasive species, yes.
Yeah, and the information is available online, and it's a great resource. I mean, they have some books and publications, but the way you would access the information would be online.
I think that's a hyperlink, right? That connects to something.
I
Well, that
don't
would be
know
great if it was a hyperlink. It should
I'm
be.
not sure. It's
Yeah.
12,
It should be one.
1208.
Because, I mean, occasionally somebody might not know what it is, but they should. Or they'll find out.
My comment on that section, I don't know why we can't say it's prohibited.
Well, that was going to be my comment when we finished all of
Okay.
Steve's, and I'm going to go back. But
Okay.
I agree with you 100%, and I have that comment on my page too. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that right now.
Do you want to?
Sure.
Okay. Well, Kathy, do you want to go first, or we can tag team on this?
Oh, no, I mean, this would apply to anybody who's required to do a landscape plan, residential or commercial.
I agree.
It doesn't apply to somebody who's got an existing yard and has a wacky idea about what they want to plant.
So somebody who's pulling a permit,
Right.
required, they need to
Right.
follow
So
it.
it's new development. I don't even know if we require a landscape plan for major additions, 50%. I'm not sure about that, but whatever. It's major. It's new development, and
remodel.
So we're starting from scratch in terms of landscaping. So I think we're perfectly. It's just very appropriate to say from the very beginning, don't put invasive species on your landscape plan.
And I would say this too, and this is what I think the city should do. This is my opinion. So if you go onto the Cal-IPSI site, in some places they kind of break it up to Northern California to Southern California. They get more rain. They may have some things that are invasive, where down here it's moderately invasive, etc. But I personally, and I know the city had a list years ago. I even had one that was like a mimeograph one before anything was online from the city, had a list of species that you do not plant and that are just not permitted. If you're pulling a permit and you have to turn it down, I don't care if it's residential, ag, whatever zoning you have, you are not allowed to plant these species. And the reason I'm saying this is, number one, a good portion of them are fire hazards.
Right.
They multiply rapidly. They choke out our waterways. A lot of them are high water users, not that. Ultimately, they end up choking out the native species, displacing wildlife. They become cost a lot of money to maintain, and they're hard to eradicate. We don't want to.
Arunda?
Yeah, Arunda is a very good example, and it's on the highly invasive list for I think almost 40 states or something in the country.
Yeah.
So, but there are a lot of things that I keep seeing more of them showing up in town. A lot of things blow in and it's a weed and you don't have control. But I know when we've had projects come through, I've actually said before, when they've come in for a DRP, take something off there. And that I just made that call. I don't know if I had the authority, but I did. But why take the chance? Why create the environment for more water to get usurped or for fire to spread more easily, for bigger maintenance issues when we don't really have to? And there's so many other plants out there. So to me, I don't feel like we're restricting someone. I feel like we're being proactive and smart planners by doing that.
I don't have a
It could be
problem with
checklist.
changing
These
strongly
plants you do
discouraged
not
to
put on
prohibited.
the city of Ojai.
Yeah.
That's my argument.
Okay. I don't have a problem with changing
help make the
strongly discouraged to prohibited.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about
Yeah.
use of invasive plants in a landscape design plan.
Right. And unfortunately, some of these are still available in the nursery trade. Some nurseries have stopped selling some of these plants, but some of them haven't. And some of them are considered borderline invasive. But if you start tromping around, walking down a creek or, even a dry creek bed or what have you, it's amazing what you can find in things that have escaped from landscapes. And a lot of our invasives were actually brought to the US as ornamentals because they look so cool, with no idea that they were going to escape and become a major issue. So
So is it clear if the person, if the reference is to Cal IPC, it is clear if they go there what is an invasive plant species?
no.
No.
So I guess there's two ways we could, well, this is once again my opinion, that we could address that. I think the city should generate a list of species that are not permitted.
Agreed.
And we can say why, or we could even say where if there was some little bit of delineation. The alternative would be, which I think is a little more lenient, is that you would go onto the Cal IPSI site, but I think it needs more definition where you would say, you would refer to the Southern California list, and probably, I think they still have it, I haven't looked on it recently, but they had one invasive species in relationship to waterways, which we talked about, a couple weeks ago. We talked about the waterways and or creekside and what was a blue line and what wasn't. And at that time, I brought up this topic of, okay, even if a creek isn't a blue line, it eventually flows into a blue line that flows into another, goes downstream. And those invasives can move in water. So why do we want to encourage them anywhere? So personally, I feel like there needs to be some more definition there and clarity. I don't know, maybe that has to go to city council. I'm not sure.
All of these text amendments go to city council.
Yeah, but based on our water condition here in the valley, based on fire, all these different things, it's like, why are we messing around? And once again, I don't want to take people's rights away, but at the same time, there's so many plants out there that are good that you could use. Why not make it specific and say you shall not use these plants?
Well, again, this is for where people starting from scratch with new landscaping.
Right, and this would be the homeowner that's just going to the nursery. This is, unless the city did that, I don't know how you would control it. Really, the only way you can control it is through a project that is required landscape plans for the permitting process.
Right.
But
So
it's a start, and maybe it's a drop in the bucket, but it's why add more inoculum? That's what I always like to say.
Right. I agree. So what we need here in this paragraph, in this one line paragraph, is the proper words. Should we say such as those in the California Invasive Plant Council Southern California list is prohibited?
Well, we need to, this is a deeper dive.
Okay.
We need to go into it and explore that a little bit more because they're always updating and they have a lot of different lists, but I think we need to look at it and where and how it applies to Ojai.
All right. We'll hold that change for a deeper dive.
Yeah. It also ties in with fire in some of what's listed on the fire code list, which I have questions about because we don't have that referenced in this document. It ties in with that as well. So it's really kind of a comprehensive approach to how we landscape and why we do it, and potentially what the outcomes could be or should be. So
you're saying there should be a reference to the Ventura County Fire Protection District list or something?
I'm thinking it requires a deeper dive and to define how and what the direction the city wants to move. Maybe they want to keep it really vague. I don't agree with that. I think it should be more stringent. But maybe that's part of our deeper dive discussion. I don't know, Luke, maybe you can guide us on, what would your input be on this, or what do you think?
I look forward to the deeper dive discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So it requires a little more research just to help define it.
And I think even when we start having that, Susan has her hand raised.
Yes, Susan.
Susan has a question.
Yeah, I just, as part of your deeper dive, can you address, I still don't know if artificial turf, is it called, or lawns are legal in Ojai. I don't know. I mean, I think they should not be legal if we can justify why. And then the other thing I'd like for you to discuss in your deeper dive is that so many people, I think they think they're doing a good thing. And I saw there's an example in the Arbolado. All of a sudden, there's this vast area that's some kind of sand or gravel.
Those granite, or gravel.
Yeah, but what is the impact of that on the oak trees? Because they keep it completely barren of leaves. And I imagine the ground will get harder and harder underneath. So I don't know.
That's a good point, Susan. I happen to have that on a note about that on the same page. There's a lot of deeper dive things that I would promote, or I would hope that the city would want to do it. And once again, it's not just because, hey, I'm a landscape architect and I'm trying to tell everybody what to do. I'm looking at it from a very comprehensive approach to our watershed, fire, climate change,
Yes.
not having to use pesticides because we've allowed invasives to come in.
Yes.
It's all about the environment and how can we manage it, and how can we do something ahead of time before something potentially could happen.
Yes.
And so to me, it's like, I call it smart planning, but I definitely think, yeah, we should go ahead. And Susan just brought up one of the points I have also. So that's a good
artificial turf.
Well, no, artificial turf isn't in here. And Lucas, maybe you can I'm not sure if I saw it in here again, but I know in our old design guidelines, it said no artificial plant material was allowed. And I don't know if I missed it and it's still in here or not, but you do see people putting
Doesn't take any water.
Yeah, but that's the part where the people need to be educated about the importance, especially now, of replenishing the soil. You know, we need to be regenerating the soil, not ending up with soil that's so hard that the water doesn't even permeate into the ground.
Right.
Okay.
And it also, it affects our evapotranspiration rate. And, now what did we just experience, a couple of years ago with 117, and now the last 2 weeks with this, like 119, I know it said 122 at the Public Works. But a lot of it gets into like, what are we doing and how are we managing our environment to help mitigate that? And if we're adding like more gravel and more DG and artificial turf, now you're affecting the evapotranspiration rate. And yeah, maybe it's property by property, but you got to start somewhere. And so I think being proactive is really smart. And
okay, that all sounds like when we take a deeper dive into Article 12.
Yeah. And I think we need to do it sooner and later.
Yes.
Sooner than later.
Yeah.
Water, the issue is going away, and neither is the fire, and neither is climate change.
Yeah.
Okay, items 31 and 32 are just renumbering protocol again. 33, though, I would ask Kathy Nolan, where are we with this?
So which one? We're on 33?
Item 33, page 24.
Well, let me get there. Yeah.
Reference to mulching requirement.
Okay, so I did a comment about that too, and we may want to do a deeper dive. So with the MWELO, the state law says you are required to put 3 inches of mulch in all your planted areas, and you're allowed to leave a certain portion of your landscape all unmulched, which is 5%, and that's for like insect habitat. But essentially what they're saying is you need to cover the ground because now you're conserving water, you have less evaporation, so less water use. You're also keeping the weeds down. It also breaks down, feeds the soil microbes, specifically the fungi.
Would this work to put MWELO in front of mulching requirement?
Right. But then I have a question. I know the Babs and I believe the city council were working on changing the fire zone status for the city of Ojai. I know that with construction, including landscape construction, we now have to specify and build to that more stringent fire code. But I searched through the city website months ago because I had a project that was in the wildland urban interface, but within the city limit. And I didn't see that any of the landscaping got addressed. I saw the building, and I could be wrong. But for instance, with the county of Ventura, the unincorporated area, if you're in a high fire zone or very high fire zone, they have a different mulching standard. And it's 2 inches, and it's a specified mulch that's pretty much decomposed, that's less flammable.
It's less stringent than Mwilo?
No, it's more stringent. Well, even though it's less mulch, you have to use a certain one, and you have to keep it 5 feet away from the house.
Oh.
So,
right. Okay.
and the reason I bring that up is after the Thomas Fire, the city of Ventura, who has their own, I mean, they have the state code, but then they have some of their own guidelines. But after the Thomas Fire, they were scrambling to go, like, what do? We have all these homes that were lost, and people are going to have to pull permits and redo it. And what they ended up doing was they ended up using some of their own guidelines or specifications, but they also used the county of Ventura's for the mulch and for fuel modification and some other things. So all the plans that I did for the city of Ventura, I had include all the notation that I got from the county. And I don't want to make this sound too confusing, but I come back to us being in a high, I don't know what our final zoning is, or if that's been established, but we do know we're vulnerable. And is this another deeper dive that we want to go into?
I think probably
we
mulching
do.
requirement by itself is vague enough that we probably should do a deep dive and come up with something more specific.
So right now, maybe we stay with the state 1 of 3 inches. Mulch is actually a good thing, but it also can be flammable. So you have to kind of weigh it. We have to, it requires a little thought. So
just the way it reads right now is the county, the unincorporated areas are stricter than the state. And then the city of Ojai is
has the state.
The city of Ojai is less strict than the county.
Yeah, and when I say less strict, I don't even know if that's the correct word, but in a way, yes, because with the county, it only for high fire zones or very high fire, that you have to they want less mulch. It needs to be a certain type of mulch, and you have to list it on your plans. And it has to be, away from the house for 5 feet. So there's more stringent guidelines. Whereas the state one has just kind of a blank 3 inches. You still have to specify out what it is, the material is, but it's 3 inches, which normally I would say is great. And maybe in some places in the city, 3 inches is great, but we do have areas that are in the wildland urban interface. We may, once again, want to go to specify, hey, maybe we want to follow the county, or we want to do some research and see what Santa Barbara County is doing, or some of our local other counties, or anywhere in our state, because the whole good portion of the state's on fire.
I would submit then perhaps the right thing to do is just delete from this text amendment the phrase "need a citation for this" and cover this paragraph in a deep dive later.
Yeah, I'll keep it highlighted in yellow.
I don't know if I answered your question. Are you on 5 or 4 or 5? Roman numeral 4 or 5?
It's actually Roman numeral 6.
6.
Oh, that one. Okay. Because that one, I'm sorry, you guys. What I shared was good, but I was not addressing the one.
You were talking about subsection.
Yeah, I was on 4. When you said mulch, I missed looking at the correct citation. But this is in regards to a hydroseed, which is a whole different.
So is there a different mulching requirement for hydroseed?
Yeah, I think that's the question, is where's the
So you have the question.
mulching requirement?
So typically what hydroseed is, it's when you have a very large area, and oftentimes it's for used on slopes. Like Caltrans does it a lot. You go down the highway and you'll see it looks like green or turquoise. You go, God, what do they do? Paint the soil? But they color the hydroseed mix. And it usually has the seed, kind of a tackifier, like a natural tackifier. And it has sometimes like pulp, like paper pulp. and they mix it all up like a slurry, which they even mention here. And then they have a big hose and they just shoot it out, spray paint it, so to speak, on the slope. You typically don't mulch that. The paper almost acts like a mulch to help water, and you don't want to put 3 inches of bark mulch on it because the seeds may not germinate and come through. So in my opinion and my experience, I have never hydroseeded and put mulch on top of the hydroseed.
Well, this says the mulching portion of the seed mulch slurry.
Yeah. Shall meet the mulching requirement. And are they referring to the 3 inches above or some
Don't
other
know.
requirement?
Right.
Have no idea.
I mean, I read it as number is referring to 4, but yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, in my experience, I guess we'd have to find out where this is at. And
Well, yeah, is the mulching requirement something that's already here in the code? Or is it something else?
Right. And like I said, from experience,
I did a search through the entire code, and this is the only reference to mulching requirement.
truthfully, I don't think it applies. I like I said, based on my experience, I've never been involved in a project or even heard of somebody adding more than what they put in the slurry, which can kind of act as a mulch to a degree.
Maybe the mulch would be in lieu of the paper. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're saying you don't, it's not necessarily making sense the way it's
Right.
worded.
If,
Right,
if
and then
there
when you
is a
say-
standard, we should put it in here.
Yeah.
If
In other
there
words,
is
when
no
you say,
standard, I'm not sure we need the
Yeah.
paragraph at all.
Yeah.
Like what is the mulching requirement? I mean, do we call that out?
well, that's the question is like, now where would we find that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
where I'm going to. Is there something in the state code?
We'll cover that on the next round then, and we'll move on.
Yeah.
from it.
Right. And like I said, a lot of times they add to that slurry mix, and maybe that's where it needs to be specified in the slurry mix. There's a certain ratio of organic or non-organic material that's sort of acting as a mulch or moisture retention material.
Okay.
We might have to call a hydroseed company.
The email items 34 through 40 are all again renumbering. I listed them separately because they occur in different places.
Okay. 34
Through 40.
Yep. All right, so moving on to 41. On page 31, lines 1 and 2, remove the yellow highlighting. Where's 30?
Substitution of non-conforming use.
Can I ask a question on page 29 or?
Of course.
You know, we did, so there apparently, so we have a section on gray water systems, and I must admit I've never really read through the landscape section, so I'm glad to see this. And maybe this is directed at Kathy, but so do we need more work on this, on gray water systems, like encouraging it? Is it, or do you think this is complete the way it is?
Well, you know, right now it promotes, which means it encourages, something I thought that should happen all along is that for any new construction, unless they have the soil type, they really can't keep the water on site, that this would be part of your building permit, that you would be required to plumb for gray water. You didn't have to hook it all up to the landscape, but it doesn't cost a lot to do it.
Okay, so there,
But
again,
it's part of building standards, not
it should be
zoning
part of the
regulations.
building standard. And then once you come to the end of the house, then it goes into the landscape.
right.
And ideally, I mean, I wish we could just say, yes, you have to do it unless you've got, some kind of expansive soil, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know, this has been going on for over 10 years that I've talked to a lot of people at the city, and I haven't gotten any traction on this.
Well, I guess, well, certainly,
I wish I would. Could.
certainly general plan policies should definitely
Yeah, maybe that's where we'll
work on.
have
So
it.
we've got the policies, and then whether we need any additional wording in the zoning that, you know,
Right,
more requires more thinking, and then certainly that would translate into
right.
building code.
It's kind of a no-brainer if you can do it.
Yeah.
It's water you've already paid for, and you can use it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Souza,
Okay.
you raised your hand?
Yeah. You know, I was reading it a moment ago, but now I can't find it. But it did mention that you weren't allowed to use the kitchen water, dishwater, for gray water. Where are you? I know it's
Oh, it's page 29.
okay, page 29. Yeah.
There's just a small section on gray water systems.
Right in the middle of the page.
Yeah.
Page 29.
Yeah, and the plumbing for a gray water system really is a Title IX issue. We could say that it's encouraged.
Anyway,
But
somehow,
that's still not part of land use, it's building standards.
yeah. But it,
Well, it could, I mean,
It's a kind of a hybrid.
it's a high, it belong, I mean, it is associated with a landscape plan. The detail comes from the building code for sure.
Remember, there's three opportunities, three different ways you can do the gray water. The simple one without a permit, but you can get the details. I think we still have them, or we have a link on the city website, laundry to landscape. Basically, you're hooking up your washing machine. There's some guidelines on how to do a little bit of plumbing. And basically the water goes out into the landscape. They tell you how to do it. Then there's the simple one, and that's going to include your bath and sink water, excluding, of course, the toilets, black water, kitchen sink, and dishwasher. But it could have your laundry could be in there too. And that's plumbed in the house or under the house, whatever. And then it goes into the landscape, but you can't hold the laundry to landscape or the simple one in a tank. It has to go directly into the landscape. So you're not holding the water. Then the other one is the standard one. And that's where essentially you can even do black water if you're doing a filtration, as long as you've got a little mini plant going on there. But the water is filtered, it's stored, and it's pumped, and you essentially could run it through your irrigation system. The other two, the laundry and the simple, you don't want to run through your irrigation system. Laundry landscape is pretty inexpensive, as well as the simple. It's a little more expensive to put in
The simple one involves putting organic material on the landscape, though.
Yeah, it's mulch. It can go into a mulch bed. Like you can water fruit trees, your hedges, ornamental trees. You just can't put it on like certain types of vegetables that you're going to be harvesting to eat, like leafy greens, etc. But you could do it definitely on fruit trees, and I do it.
Okay, I think we need a deeper dive then on 1220. If there are nuances to where you can or where you should and should not use gray water on your property, then that is, I think, appropriate to a section of the code that talks about land use. As far as the plumbing for it, that's a building standards.
But right now, it's just encouraged. It doesn't say you shall use gray water.
I mean,
Because,
oh,
go ahead, Kathy.
yeah, I mean, of course, this should be stemming out of general plan policies, but I mean, I would like to see, and I'm not sure where it would be appropriate. It may not be the zoning code, it may be the building chapter, but
Yeah.
I think all new developments should be required to put in the gray water system, at least the residential. And I would like to see that eventually happen.
BAB about putting that in the code.
What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not disagreeing with you feeling that way, but we should talk to the BAB about recommending that be part of the code.
Agreed.
And actually, the BAB has I've had several members, I mean, even over the years, they have said,
Well, I was there once.
yeah, and yeah, Steve, you know, yeah, if the planning commission, if we have any recommendations, we're not saying to put it in, but we're just saying, oh, make sure, you know, we want you to look at gray water again. And here's why. They're open to it.
Yeah.
Likewise, if they have something
Grab
for us,
anytime you want.
yeah. You know, there's because there's a lot of crossover. So.
All right. Well, let's look at page 31 then. Top of the page. This is item 41 on the email. Did you highlight that specifically, Lucas?
I did. Substitution of non-conforming uses. So if you read it from the beginning, and then you end up with the sentence at the very end, therefore or thereafter, each successive replacement use shall be more restrictive than the previous use.
Is that after the original use or is that after the substitute use?
That's after the substitute, because the substitute is covered prior to that in the same paragraph. It says may be replaced by another.
So you get two
And
chances.
then thereafter, so that's the third.
More restrictive.
You get two chances and then the hammer comes down.
Yes.
Anyway, it was.
But this is current language, right?
I don't know that I've ever seen a standard read that way for non-conforming. Usually you just look for conformance at some point. So you're looking for a use, you have that one chance, and then the use becomes, you find uses that are conforming to the current standard. So, but it's giving chances, just more restrictive. So I'm not really sure how I would apply that, but I wanted to have at least a brief discussion. We can certainly do a deeper dive on that and leave it highlighted for further consideration.
Yeah. I'm not sure how what does more restrictive mean?
Well, that's my other point, is I'm not really sure.
Not a clear standard.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how I enforce something like that. And
whereas the rest of that paragraph up above says if you replace a non-conforming use with another non-conforming use, it has to be no more non-conforming and no more detrimental to the public welfare. That just says you can't make it worse.
Is this, do you think, tied into the building code? Because the building code continually gets more stringent?
Well, this is a non-conforming use, not a non-conforming structure.
Yeah.
So I think the use is clearly in our job jar, but I'm not sure at all what that last sentence means, and I'd be happy to take it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at it, I like the way it starts out. A legal non-conforming use may be replaced by another non-conforming use subject to the granting of a conditional use permit. So it's giving discretion,
right?
But that discretion is reviewed
right
at a public hearing. So it's providing that path forward, but knowing that path forward has discretionary review tied to it. So that makes sense to me. Right. It's non-conforming. There was a reason why those areas were changed, those uses were changed. So there's certainly consideration and review and applicability applied to how that is handled in the future. So that to me is logical.
The thought of the first sentence
doesn't make sense
for me says don't make it worse, and that's appropriate.
Right. Agreed.
Okay, so can we agree to just delete the second sentence?
Yeah, I think they're just trying to elaborate on the first part of the paragraph, but I think it's...
Or misinterpreting the first part.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Then page 32. Anything else on page 31 that a commissioner would want to bring up? Okay. Page 32. We've got another editorial phrase there in the upper half of the page, highlighted in yellow.
Vehicle trailers. So this is the RVs and
That's the
other
abandoned
such-
vehicle thing, yeah.
Right.
Can I ask, what do they mean by a public location? Is that the street? What is that, driveway? What is the
It's off of private property.
Where are you seeing public location at? Oh, at the very end.
on C? So we've got A, B, C. In C, it's got can't be parked on private property. However, one can be displayed as long as each displayed vehicle or trailer is not parked in any one public location for more than 14 days total.
Yeah, this was a big deal when the what do they call it, Municipal Advisory Council, the map for Ojai Valley. People almost came to blows down in Oakview
Right.
about parking of RVs and trailers on the street in front of homes.
Yeah, residential area.
So they were in favor of it or they were opposed to it?
But it depends whether it was your trailer or not.
Yeah.
It's
Why is it you were opposed?
down in the
Most
public.
most
Without the
people were
street,
opposed
Yeah.
because it made the streets too narrow
Yeah,
and you couldn't see any of the houses because they had
right.
10-foot tall RVs parked in front of them and stuff like that.
Yikes.
But that enforcement seems impractical. We
Well-
have enough trouble right now with code compliance. I can't imagine that it makes any sense for the city to tag somebody with roaming the city, looking for parked RVs and trailers and keeping track of how long they've been where they are.
Do we
Well,
have?
let me just
Yeah.
say that this is
We don't have parking enforcement.
oh, go ahead, John.
Oh, sorry. Do we have parking enforcement?
Yes, we do. And you know what? This is an issue in my neighborhood. And code enforcement actually does this. And when there's a complaint filed, they do it on a complaint basis.
Okay,
And I actually thought that the restriction was 72 hours, I think.
Yeah.
It's like a car. It's the same as a car,
yeah,
a non-operating vehicle parked or just a car left in the street for too long.
Right.
And I thought I think it's 72
in
hours.
the county, it's 72 hours. In
Yeah,
the
I think
city,
it
it's
is in
48.
Ojai. And code enforcement definitely will be very proactive on that, but it's more of a complaint basis issue. When
Complaint driven,
somebody's
okay.
violating the time period, it's very easy for code enforcement to deal with it.
So it's a per complaint basis. So if
I think so. You know, I mean, you'd have to check with the city manager.
So they drive by with chalk and mark tires and stuff
I
like
don't
that,
think
or what?
I don't think they do that. Oh, you mean in terms of enforcing? Well, if the complainer can document that it was parked as of a certain date, certain time, they can come back and check it over the next period of
Okay.
time.
Yeah, code enforcement's not chalking tires. I just want to make sure that we're clear
Yeah.
on that.
No,
Is
they
code
will.
going out and monitoring these.
Yes, they will. They will go out and they will deal with the violator. Yes, they do.
Yes, we are keeping track.
I wasn't suggesting that to do what I was asking because I don't know how
Okay.
it works.
I've seen that. It's something that's done in other cities. Just
Yeah, no, and certainly there are, I think there's a lot of issues where RVs are parked in side yards and they're completely visible to the street, and I don't think that's allowed either. But that may be that might be more difficult, but enforcing something that's parked in the street is not problematic at all. And I'm not sure, is that what is meant by the public location? And see, I'm still not clear what that means.
I think public location means not on private property.
Yeah, so that, I think we're meaning
Yeah.
street.
Like on the
right?
street, basically,
Street.
or it could be a public park.
Basically
I mean,
on the street, yeah.
Or public.
It's possible
parking.
that this section could use some work. I
Yeah.
grant you that.
I would
I would agree with
suggest
that.
though that we just delete that phrase that's highlighted in yellow. That was an
Agreed.
editorial comment.
Agreed.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, and return to discuss this at a deeper dive.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
A DD.
Mark that down.
And just a random question. Do we have, you said we do have parking enforcement. Who enforces the parking? Is it,
It's
Not
code
code.
enforcement.
code enforcement does?
Code enforcement does, but
Sometimes the
be
police.
clear that we're not, code enforcement's not going out and enforcing parking. It would be more,
Complaint driven.
it would be more complaint driven.
Right.
And in addition to that, it's typically in cooperation with the police department as well. So
Police department.
You know what? I was just going to add that because I think I've seen the police come out.
So that it results in a citation then.
right.
Yes.
Well, yeah, good.
It could.
Possible.
Good, yeah, okay. Page 34, there's just a bunch of, oh no. Page 34, table 3.5. Auditoriums, this is out the middle of the page, auditoriums, community centers, and other places of public assembly. So what does that mean? Does it include churches and public parks? Or is that part of other places of public assembly? Or do we need to specifically include them? And
Mentioned
and
anywhere
if they're different,
religious
then we need
facilities.
another row that talks about different parking requirements.
Yeah, I see religious facilities here
Yeah.
on page 35.
I thought one of the city attorneys was at one of our
Okay.
meetings. And
We
they-
talked about this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they said we can't really,
There's an exemption.
and we can't penalize. I mean, we can't discriminate basically and have something.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a law out there called Arlupa.
That's right.
Right.
Religious law. Yeah, it's pretty strict in terms of, and it ties the city's hands, local jurisdiction's hands, in what we can or cannot do.
All right, what about public parks? That's a requirement the city would put on itself.
Yeah. We don't have a standard in here for public parks.
I don't see one.
Let's see.
Unless it is an other place of public assembly and included in that current row.
You know, it's interesting. Community centers typically are within a park itself. So that in itself is identifying a parking standard.
Yep,
But
not
that would be
always though.
specific to the community center, not necessarily to a park.
214 West Aliso was a case Kathy will remember, came before the Planning Commission for a purported community center,
Oh,
all
right,
on private property
Right.
in the VMU.
Oh, is that the corner? Is that what?
And it
Yes.
got rezoned.
Yeah.
It did?
I thought it did. What, didn't it get rezoned to?
I don't think
No,
so. It's
no.
still PL.
It never got rezoned. It's in the
Okay.
VMU and it's in a residential zone,
Oh.
but it's a purported community center.
Right.
Right. And Steve, I remember our discussion that night. We were asking our community development director, okay, what's the definition? I remember there was a lot of discussion and back and forth about getting clarity.
Yes.
Kathy, you remember that? Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, the zoning issue. And
Well,
the
I was thinking the zoning was PL, but they were trying to make it a community center so that it would fit in the PL zone.
Exactly. And it's still, they're calling it is like a community center, but it's a private community center.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
not, it's not
What was
like,
the cross street again? Remind me.
what
This
is
is
it? It's on,
Kenyatta and Aliso, northeast corner.
Lisa, you're right.
it's
So
where
if
the
it's
old
Kenyatta and Aliso, that is zoned PL.
See,
Yeah.
I did change it.
Ah,
They
okay.
changed it?
Yeah. I thought it got changed.
Was.
Uh,
They were trying to be a community center because that's a permitted
Or
use.
was it the opposite?
Oh.
Maybe I'm mixing it
yeah,
up.
I don't think that because the zoning map I'm looking at
Oh.
has not been changed since 2008.
They could only fit as a permitted use as a community center, so it was in the
Yeah.
PL. I think that's
And it was PL because it was originally a nunnery.
yes,
Right, the St. Thomas Aquinas.
but it was fitting a round peg into a square hole. That's for sure.
Sure it was.
Okay, let's circle back here. Let's circle back here.
All right.
Stray
We
cats.
may need a deep dive on that. We may not, but we'll
I
come
think,
back to
yeah,
it.
I think there's more discussion to be had. Maybe we start looking at some other standards that we could potentially fold in from a parking standpoint and discuss whether those are appropriate.
Sure.
Let me mark that down.
Did we have any other issues on the rest of that table 3.5?
Yeah, I just have a general question about this.
Yes, sir.
Is this for like new construction that comes new that they have to adhere to this?
Everything that we get the city council to put into the code controls future action.
Okay.
Unless it specifically says retroactive to some such, like if you're talking about ADUs, then it talks about, did it meet the code when the structure was built or when the conversion of an existing structure was actually made. That is the only set of times when there is a referral back to a previous set of rules.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it controls what happens in the future.
Okay, so like if one of like the downtown storefront areas gets remodeled under a new permit, do they have to somehow add additional parking spaces?
It depends. It depends.
Maybe
on the
change of use, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
because
So,
I mean,
for instance,
I
retail-
live downtown, and there is clearly parking issues with
Oh, sure.
with that.
Is there
So-
parking issues or is there a walking problem? Because if you look, a lot of downtown areas don't necessarily have a parking issue. They have a walking problem where
They don't
you
want
have
a walk
residents
problem.
having an issue, or people that are coming into the downtown area that
Yeah.
want to park as close to the destination as possible. When
Yeah.
a downtown is really intended for communal uses, where you have a bunch of different uses or a mixture of uses, if you will, where those that are coming down are going to not only that one specific use, but also other businesses within that downtown or Main Street district.
All right, understood.
I wanted to talk just briefly about your use component too, because if it's going from, like, for instance, retail, which is a less strict from a use standpoint, to a restaurant, which is a more intense use, more parking heavy, traffic heavy, then yeah, you would be looking at potential parking challenges there, certainly, and we would be addressing those more than likely at the planning commission level. So it would be before this body.
That's if you're changing uses, even if it's from one permitted use to another permitted use.
Yeah, now that's a good point, because a lot of times parking is the first thing you should be looking at, and you find yourself looking at the parking and then seeing that it's permitted. So you're thinking, well, it's permitted, but the reality is that the parking as a more intensive use can trigger other review. So
Can trigger a more stringent requirement for parking.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's a
Okay,
good question though. All right.
so table 3.5, and then we're into table 3.6, alternative shared use parking standards. And I had a question on page 40 in that table 3.6.
Hold on, let me make sure. All right, are we on 44? Is that where we're at?
No, page 40, item 44, yes.
Item 44, page 40. Okay. What are the rules for fast food, like Jersey Mike's, Jim and Rob's?
Wouldn't Jersey Mike's be a deli under 1,000 square feet?
I don't know, but item 1 in that same row says excluding fast food.
Yeah, I don't know if they're
Oh,
defined as fast
I
food.
didn't
Though,
even see
right?
that.
Yeah, I don't know if Jersey Mike's is considered fast food, is it?
And Jim and Rob's, you can sit inside or outside and eat there. It's not just takeout.
Right.
I guess, what's the definition of fast food, I guess?
Yeah, what's the definition of fast food?
Fast food may occur in the paragraph that deals with formula businesses, and I don't remember which paragraph that was.
Yeah.
But that was something that was instituted after Jersey Mike's got a
Right.
business permit, and the city council discovered that it's a chain.
Right.
And so now we have this paragraph called formula businesses that
Yep.
for the purposes of fast food says you can't have it if you're a chain.
Right.
Right.
But because this paragraph specifically says excluding fast food, I
Right.
don't know what the requirements are unless we remove the words excluding fast food.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you can have the formula business
not be-
requirements and still consider whatever category the formula business would fall under, that would be the parking requirement. Although, I guess they would put this in because formula businesses are presumably prohibited.
So you know what we probably need is the definition of fast food, because I'm not sure if this
Yeah.
is true or not.
Well,
A lot
the
of fast
paragraph
food,
on
there's
formula businesses has
there's
a pretty
drive up.
detailed definition.
For fast food.
Yeah, and
Well,
I'm not sure if that falls into the category, but to me that could be the trigger, because if you're having to have people drive into the parking lot and idle and stacking cars, maybe that ties into with this parking. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think we
the
need
formula
to-
businesses
yeah.
talk about standardized menus, uniforms for the people, and that you pay for the food before you get it.
So those
I
are,
think, the three major characteristics.
Okay.
and those are already,
Formula business, but it sounds an awful lot like fast food.
and formula businesses are excluded, right, already.
That's right. Other than Jersey Mike's, which got their business permit before.
So I would say that we don't even need that excluding fast food. I mean,
I think whatever fast food we have in town ought to fall into one of those categories
Yeah.
there.
Agreed.
exactly. I don't think it's considered fast food for our definition, at least.
But everything right now is considered fast food.
Right?
Yeah, it's all-
driving up and picking
Right.
it up.
Yeah.
Well, there's some outdoor dining, but
We give a bonus for a slow food.
Because there is a difference.
That's the food.
There is a difference between fast food and fast food restaurants. And I
Yes.
think we need to look into that as well, because technically we
Yeah.
might not have any fast food restaurants in town, but we do have fast food.
Yeah, so we actually do have a definition, but which covers fast foods. The problem is it's the title of the definition is drive-in and drive-through sales.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
that's not always the case. The Nest, for example. I think of the Nest as fast food, but you don't drive in or drive through. You park and go to the window and get your food.
I almost think you leave out the term fast food, but if you look at the definition of a facility that has, or a business that has, you drive up, you can, drive up to the window, you're stacking vehicles. That's a whole different situation in a parking lot.
I think if we just take out the phrase excluding fast food,
Agreed.
then items 1 and 2 in that row cover what we need to cover.
Agreed.
Yeah, because they're all technically restaurants. They're just
Yeah.
They're just
Mhm.
making out a sit-down restaurant.
So
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was
Right,
just going to say, okay, so we have what we have right now, but let's just say somebody comes in and they're not a formula business, but they want to technically open a fast food restaurant where people are driving up and placing the order at the window and driving out, which is part of the definition of a fast food restaurant. Do we need to have something in there, or do we say, oh, they're excluded? We don't, you can't even come to Ojai.
No, they would have to park like a regular restaurant.
Don't we already have, I mean, we have, what is it? What's that little burrito place? The Tortilla House? I mean, I think they're just a pickup window, right? Right, Main
Right.
Street there.
There's one right on Signal Street
Yeah,
that
right
is
on
strictly
Signal.
pickup.
But
Yeah,
I think it's
I don't
what we're
think they
talking about
can.
is the driving up to a
Yeah, they don't
window.
have a, I don't think they have a parking lot. I think they just have a little,
No, they
Wow.
don't.
nothing dedicated for them specifically. So they don't even have parking at all. All of it's
but
shared.
we'd all agree it's a restaurant.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it is shared parking, so that would be under this, use
but
parking.
the problem is, now I forget the use tables, but like alcohol sales, I think restaurants are a permitted use in the C1 zone. So
Yes.
it wouldn't even require a conditional use permit. So that's a deep dive. That's another, I mean, that's for another day, but
Okay.
just want to point it out.
So do we want to take out the phrase excluding fast food or not?
I think we could. I don't think it's needed.
I would be in favor.
I think it's fine.
So I guess, let me just be clear.
Okay.
So if we take it out and a new business wants to come in, technically they're fast food, and you drive in and that you can park, you can walk up to a window, or a good percent of the people are driving through and picking up their meals. Are they going to be covered in what we already have?
They'd have to
And then
park
you're
for,
If
parking.
it's, well, what we have in the code without that phrase is restaurants over 1,000 square feet and restaurants under 1,000 square feet.
Absolutely. So
And I think
the only reason,
Even if it's just drive-through, it's a restaurant, and it's either going to be over or under 1,000 square feet.
so where this would hold somebody up, if I'm a restaurant owner and I want to come to Ojai and I see this requirement, and then it says excluding fast food, I'm immediately going to want to know, well, what are the requirements for fast food? Maybe I can become a fast food place.
Right. Maybe. Right. I don't know. I don't think we have a definition of fast food in the code.
I agree.
That's what I was asking, if we knew what that was. And I'm not opposed to what everyone's saying. I just want to make sure I'm clear on it. And I'm just thinking, if people do in fact drive in and you have stacking vehicles, how does that affect any way, the parking layout and the amount of parking spaces required or not?
Maybe we need to add something for drive-in or drive-through.
some cities do have stacking.
Right.
A
That's where
stacking.
I'm going with this. It's like, well,
And the
a
problem
little bit
is,
different.
the problem is without, well, you either need a standard that's pretty clear,
Right.
or you at the very least need to review it as a conditional use permit, because then you can apply reasonable standards to whatever you're looking at.
Okay,
address
I
impact.
would suggest then, I would suggest we take out the phrase excluding fast food in item 1, and that we come back in a deep dive to consider whether they should be in item 3 in that row that deals with drive-in and drive-through.
I agree.
Yeah, I think coming back
Does that
to
work?
it. Yeah.
We already have an item 3, so it would actually be item 4.
It's a new item. It's a
Yeah, it would be
separate
new
item.
that
Does-
we-
I think it's,
I'm sorry, do we need a new item
item
3 or
4.
4?
Yeah,
Right,
But yeah, that makes,
okay.
that
So
makes more
let's-
sense.
Let's delete excluding fast food and delete the highlighted phrase there, and we'll pick it up in a deep dive.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because they may have more people driving up that are actually coming in that actually need to park, but then you've got to have
Yeah.
room to drive through and stack. It's a little bit, it's a
I mean,
different.
you could just call it a drive-through restaurant. Drive-through,
Yeah,
coffee place, drive-through, whatever, restaurant, cafe.
Yeah,
yeah, drive through food or beverage
I could
service.
see something like that happening perhaps out in the East End, but there's no space
Yeah.
otherwise to put in a drive-through anywhere.
I don't know if there is
Not
either,
likely to happen.
No.
But-
Okay,
but
All right.
page 41. We have just some errata again. Item 45. It's item 45 and 46 and 47 are all just taking out those
Oh, yeah.
redundancies.
Oh yeah, the redundancies and
And
feet.
48 and 49 and 50 are just part of our global add titles to sections or articles.
Okay.
you check.
Is that up to 51?
51 again is feet.
Mm-hmm. And then sign standards for 52 after Article 16.
That's
That
just like
follows
48 and 49,
that. Yeah, that follows the format.
right? And 53 is the same. It's adding the title of an article.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucas caught one there on 54. And 55, this is page 44.
Okay.
My error, we should be talking, we're talking in Article 16, not in Article 16.5. So it should say sign standard, not exterior lighting standards.
Oh,
We're in Article 16. We're not in the exterior lighting standards article.
yep.
And 57 is the same. 56 is another feet. 58 is just adding a title again.
Okay. That's page 51.
Page 51 is just adding a title. Page 53, there's just a missing word of.
Oh, I see that.
Page 55 is feet again.
That's number 60.
Item 60, yes.
All right.
Item 61 is again taking out the but not limited to after including.
That's page 60.
And if you found something else, again, please note it before we go by it.
You said streets on page 58, right?
I'm sorry?
You mentioned streets on page 58, right?
Page 58.
I don't think we were on 58. were we?
Oh, what page are we on? I'm sorry.
Where are we?
Page 60.
Oh, we're page 60?
We're on page 60 now.
Okay, there's a word that says suites instead of streets. You got that, right?
Where's that?
Page 58.
Page
Oh, that's a
58.
good
Good
catch.
catch.
It's it's B2 at the very end, very last C, B2C. Require that setbacks from suites.
Oh, yeah.
Streets.
Oh, excellent. Should be streets.
Okay. Good catch.
Thank you. And on page 60, the second paragraph from the bottom, we've got some feet again. 24 feet, twice. Oh, and 30 feet.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Is that 63?
That was item 60. 61 is on page 60. D9. Line 3. Oh, is an including but not limited to.
Yep. Yeah.
2004 E. Yes. Just a typo there. There's a missing dash in the section 10-2.2009. Right under the paragraph E.
Yep. I see that.
And F, we've got 25 feet and 30 feet.
$30. Okay.
The next thing I have is on page 63, but
Is that number 64 on the list here?
yes, it is.
Can I just ask,
Please.
Lucas, so on this design review permits and precise plans, when is a precise plan required and what is it exactly?
How are we describing it here? This is
So, I mean,
fees provided in connection with the project, the precise plan, the scale, purpose, and shall indicate clearly with full dimensions of following. So that sounds to me like the precise plan is a part of the requirements, and I guess that's true. It shows it as content for the DRP or the design review permit, which is what the reviews.
So,
it's not a section that's in the packet tonight, but 10-2.2007 has the title Precise Plans When Required.
oh, and it says when it's required? Is that so?
Yes, it says unless the director or the commission has determined that a precise plan of design is not required, the following project applications shall be accompanied by a precise plan of design.
So for most design review, we would get something that's called a precise plan, unless it's for, I don't know, just something very small or
A little,
like the little refrigerator.
well,
That's a
No, this talks
precise
about
plan.
where is a precise plan required. Any application for a building permit to commence the new construction of various things, or any application for a building permit to remodel or reconstruct more than 50% of the floor area of any existing building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
And it's exclusive of single-family residential in single-family zones. Any building other than a single-family residence in a single-family zone, but that's not entirely true because the applicability section, which is 10-2-2003, speaks to when commission reviews items, and it's a section that we've taken a look at before, which is A, following proposed projects shall be subject to design review
Right.
by the commission, and then it outlines five components, and then goes into notwithstanding, and then provides that parameter for director decision determination.
Okay.
Right.
So 2007 says when a precise plan is required, and 2008, which is here on page 61 of your packet, says what's in a precise plan.
Okay. Okay.
Right. The next thing I had was on page 63, and it's another one of those including but not limited to. It's about a third of the way down the page at the right end of the line. Other traffic mitigation measures, including.
Yep. All right.
And then page 65, the sections 47, first line, and the 10.2.2101 title, the word "this" should not be in there.
Oh, it should be purpose of article.
That's what all the others read.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It got really easy toward the end here. An error of mine in our review, Lucas, was at about the fourth or fifth line down on page 67. It's actually a paragraph that's talking about home occupation permits, and the reference should be to Article 21. The title of Article 21 is really home occupation permits, not business
Yeah, you're right, it is.
tax.
Okay.
Now, item 68 may be one that we need to come back to on page 69. It talks about plan development permits, and it says a plan development permit shall propose the modification of specified development standards. It says it may adjust or modify, but doesn't say who gets to adjust or modify. And I think it's probably the commission or the council, but I don't know. Do we need to come back to that one? It's clearly not errata, it's a policy issue.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger discussion item.
All right, let's deep dive on item 68. I think we might make it.
Yeah, we're almost there.
We are.
Can I just ask one question on temporary use permits?
Sure.
If it's somewhere, then we don't need to discuss later. But so as a temporary use permit, is it for just a one-time event, or could it be for, say, somebody that wants to do 6 events over a year period, a certain amount of events over a defined time period?
There's no limitation. There's no limitation to the number of events that a particular business could have. The limitation is the number of events that could happen within that 1 day period. That's the limitation to temporary use permits.
Yeah, and all of Article 22, that is 10-2.22XX, is all about temporary use permits.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it does spell things out.
Yeah. So
Pretty well.
10-2.2202 allowable uses.
Okay.
It provides the parameters within there.
Okay. All right. Good. I didn't go reading all that, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it even limits the number of consecutive days that those events could take place, like carnivals, circuses, fairs, farmers markets. Those are ones that are probably more in tune with what we have going
Yep.
on.
Item 69 is another editorial comment. I think we should delete it. It talks about we're going to have to change other things if we go to the consolidated land use table or allowed use table that we worked through several months ago.
Yep.
But we don't need that yellow highlighted
Yeah,
stuff
Yeah,
right.
there at the top of page 70.
denote notation.
Okay.
Right. In 2305, lines 2 to 5, once and 2306. In both cases, we have added the names of things. Oh no, wait a minute. No, that talks about CEQA guidelines in 2305.
Right.
I think that requires a deep dive because we haven't figured out what the city's CEQA guidelines are.
I was just going to ask if there's any, if the
Yeah.
city has any secret guidelines,
If there are some,
and are they updated? So
if it is simply a reference to
it's better.
the state CEQA code, then we should put that reference, which is partially, I think, Lucas, it's partially CCR and it's partially Public Resources Code.
Yeah. Yeah, you're looking at two different.
Then those things should, I think, be put in where we talk about CEQA guidelines.
Agreed. It's safe. It's way
rather than
safer.
use that
We're
big
totally
phrase.
covered. We're totally covered with anything required by CEQA
Yep.
that way.
Public Resources Code, and it's.
And also, it's also in CCR somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
I'm
we'll
looking at the CEQA book right now.
add those references.
Yeah. And then the California Code of Regulations is where it continues. So there's two different sections that are referenced throughout. Okay.
So that's items 70, 71, and 72. And that then is add PRC and CCR sites. CITES.
Okay.
Then page 71. That looks to me like a policy thing again that needs a deep dive.
That's on page, that's number 73.
Number 73. It's the yellow highlighted stuff in the first paragraph on page 71.
Yeah. The
I mean, as a-
CEQA guidelines.
Yeah, as a
Developing those don't currently really exist. So we need something, and that'll be something that I don't like having something in there when we don't really necessarily have anything to back it up.
Right.
Right. I think we probably could delete the yellow highlighted sentence there and then come back to it in a deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about the time extension or a CEQA?
The time extension.
Okay. Yeah, as a part of coming back for later discussion, and it appears several times the time frame for an extension seems to be very, very restrictive. I mean, 6 months in my mind is pretty darn short. And most cities do like a year. So anyway, I would recommend we talk about making that a little more permissive.
All right. We can do that next round.
Yeah, there's something on CUPs on time limits too. You know, like you have 6 months from the date you're approved to
start
start
and make substantial progress.
And that's, yeah, I don't know. It's depending on conditions, it could be really restrictive.
Well, we should talk about it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, page 71, 2309. That's the one I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
70.
That was
Is
item
that what we're on?
74. This one is deserving of a deep dive. I think if you read various pieces of the code right now that talk about outdoor dining, it is defined as dining on the street or in a public right of way, which means that dining outside of a building but on private property is not by the current code outdoor dining. So like the hip vegan restaurant has tables between the building and the hedge. And the way at least that I read the code, that's not outdoor dining because it's not on the sidewalk, it's not in the street.
Yeah, agreed. That's a problem. And
Yeah, so
yet,
these be
but yet there's a
designated.
parking requirement for it.
That's the biggest problem that I see is
Very
is
weird.
that you can have all the outdoor dining you want. You could
And no
the
extra
size
parking.
of your restaurant, not change the parking requirements.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that is definitely
come
on
up
my list for talking.
numerous times for us. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we'll deep dive on that 2403.
Okay.
And then page 72, there was just that one was the first one, item 75. 76 is city's CEQA guidelines again.
Yep.
And 77,
This is the last one.
2405, that's actually page 73.
Oh, not 72. Oh, yeah.
2405, line 1 and 2, that's city CEQA guidelines again.
Lucas, can I just ask you another quick question?
Please.
So when you approve a minor conditional use permit, do you treat that like a director exemption where you email notices of what you've done?
Yeah, so the hearing portion is treated differently than a director's exemption. The director's exemption was built in as a part of the policy. So posting it on the website as a part of the director's exemption isn't necessarily something that's written into the code. That's a part of the policy.
Okay.
Providing notification to the commission, that's written into the policy itself, not necessarily something that was identified within the director's exemption. The minor conditional use permit, I have to look at the standards here to make sure that we would follow the standard hearing policy built into the code for minor CUPs. Let's see here.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, and that might be a deeper dive. I'd like to talk about incorporating and probably reworking at the same time the policy aspects into the code and make it very streamlined and very clear in the director exemption.
Are you talking about the Ds?
I don't think we're talking about any of that tonight, but if there's a process that's similar to that, that's defined in some policy somewhere, I would like to talk about incorporating whatever that is into the code as well.
Well, I think the other thing that I was thinking about with, I don't want to get into too much discussion on this because I think we're going to have a bigger, broader discussion about it in the coming weeks.
Okay.
Is looking at what other cities have done at it, because it's really considered to be a staff level determination, right? Still has the possibility for call up by the commission or council, right?
Right.
But what are the other cities doing at a staff level from a processing standpoint, and what do those procedures look like?
Okay. Perfect.
So I think that's when we have that discussion. I think we're going to also be bringing back what some other cities have
Okay.
within our county itself. So,
Okay.
Okay, so from 70 through 77, that's all deep dive stuff, and then we can leave the words as they are in the packet, just take out the editorial phrases, and that would be a good text amendment, I think. Understanding that for things like city CEQA guidelines and other stuff, that we will come back at a later time and suggest changes, because that occurs in that one in particular occurs in a number of places.
yeah.
So is there anything else that the commissioners want to take up in this packet?
So I have the comments that I said I'd hold off to the end. And I guess the question is, I guess we could go through it, or if we felt like Lucas, I'd leave it up to you, or do you want to pick it up at our next session? I don't think it's going to take that long, but I don't want to, I know we still have more in our packet, or a little bit more to go over. So
Well, we have future agenda items.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
all that's left.
Should I start it? Or?
Commissioner Nolan, how in depth are some of your comments? Is it RADA or is it a deeper dive? Are we gonna, if we're earmarking them as a deeper dive, we can identify where those are at, so we kind of all get an understanding.
Well, I'll tell you what I could do is, why don't I just because I have my notes, and I think we can go through it pretty quick, and we could say deeper dive, but I'll say what it is and where it is. Because most of it I think is deeper dive. Is that?
That's fine.
If I can do it in like 10 minutes or less or something. I'll try to do my best.
Not being timed on this, but.
Okay. So attachment A, page 22 of 74. At the bottom of the page, it says, this is under chapter 2, plant material. And it starts off and it says, any plant may be selected for the landscape, providing the estimated total water use. I don't know if we need the word any, if it should, or maybe it should say plants, maybe. Only because to me, when you see any plant, it's like, anything goes.
That conflicts with the invasive species again.
Yeah, and if we're referring to guidelines that we need to be looking at for specific material. So I would say strike. But if we need to talk about that more, we can. Then going on to the next page.
So wait, Kathy, so just strike any and just say plants?
Yeah, plants may be selected. And then as you go onto the next page, it says, you want to look at protection and preservation of native species, etc. But I'm thinking on letter D, where it says selection of trees based on applicable local tree ordinance or tree shading guidelines, etc. Do we want, even though I know the city council is talking about updating it, which I think is a wise choice, shouldn't we be referring to the community forest management plan as a document, a city document there?
Okay. Back on the first one.
Or not, maybe not, but.
Back on the first one on page 22.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should say non-invasive plant species may be selected.
Yeah, or I thought of that, or do we add a section, like in other words, there's A through F. Do we put a D? I mean, so far it says that, selection of, protection of, and then maybe G becomes excluding invasive plants, and we reference the calypsi, or if in fact the city decides to have a list, a reference sheet document, it would go there. It almost seems like you could do like a letter G.
I like that, because then you can kind of write something that's
right.
I like G.
More explanatory.
It's a little more of a deeper dive there. And then the other thing is, okay, so on E it says selection of plants from local and regional landscape program plant lists. So my question is, is that just very generic and anyone can use whatever list they want? Or does the city want to generate one? Or do they want to list some local regional ones that we approve?
Yeah, I think we're going way beyond errata there.
Well, that's a DD,
Yeah.
a deep dive. Okay, so most of what I'm adding is a deep dive. And I think that is a deep dive. And, maybe we talk about it, maybe it's fine, but we don't have to do that
Yeah.
today. And I'll move through that. And I have some notes here that I'm not going to say right now, because when we do the deep dive, I'll bring it up. Okay, moving down the same sheet. We kind of talked about the mulch earlier with Susie had brought that up. I have that in my notes. So that's a deep dive. Then if you go down to, let me see, where am I at here? Is that 6? Roman numeral 6, a landscape design plan for projects in fire-prone areas. This is a deep dive too. This gets back to, has the city defined, I know they were working on this, very high or high fire zones yet. So in other words, if I'm looking at these guidelines here, I would say, okay, well, here's where my project is. I don't know if it's in a high, I probably could figure it out, but I don't know for sure what the zone is.
I think the whole city is considered a high fire hazard area.
Well, they discussed it, but I don't know that it's been adopted. I don't know if it ever got finalized. So that's why I'm saying I do think if the city's going to be doing it, that they should define that, and we should know, and maybe the language there gets cleaned up. So
John, do you have any insight on that? The current status? City is a high fire hazard area. I think it is, but.
Well, they talked about it, but I don't think
Talk about the fire map, but they haven't adopted a new one.
No, but I think in terms of whatever this CAL FIRE or whatever, the whole city is high fire hazard.
State is our
Not according to the current map.
Well, Susan seems to know.
Oh, thank you.
It's in her hand.
So there'll be a presentation by Chris Stanch this coming Tuesday about this. And then that didn't give enough staff enough time to bring it all back. But I think the following meeting, we're going to be discussing everything again. And the whole issue of landscaping is definitely part of this. I asked because people on the lower end of North Signal who have very small lots are concerned about the standards because to have, to me, there should be different standards for upper North Signal than the lower part that's in the city and the smaller lots.
That gets into the how you end up zoning it.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of it. I think the major concern about the people that are advocating a new fire map is what's called the ember cast. That is, if you have a fire and you have wind, how far will the embers go to catch something else on fire? And the answer is clear across the city, depending on the wind.
Yeah.
So everybody's at risk as much as the people up at the top of Signal.
Yeah,
but in the
I was going to say there's two things that go on when you start doing the fire zones. Number one, if you're doing a permitted project and you're required to do the fuel modification plan, et cetera. So for your new design, you need to incorporate, what's allowable. In addition, with the high fire zones, and I guess the city will decide how they want to do it, but like in the county, for instance, my neighborhood, I am outside of the city limits. In the sphere of influence, just after the Thomas fire, we got rezoned and I'm now in the high fire. So I get the notice now every year about the brush clearance. So that's how what goes on. It affects when you're doing permitting and if it's required that you do a landscape plan and or the building where you're going to fall into the materials you're going to be specifying and how you do it. In addition to maintenance. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic and I know they're working on it. So to me, it was like when it says in fire prone areas, that needs to be defined.
Right. Right,
that
in
was
fact-
what I'm trying to point out here. Okay.
I got a letter from Southern California Edison about residential battery storage.
Yeah, I got that too. Yeah.
Right. And in there, it refers to a website where the Public Utilities Commission has its own definitions,
Yeah.
tier 2 and tier 3.
Right.
That is
Depends on the department.
serious and extreme fire hazard zones.
Right.
And there's a map that you can neck down onto Ojai. John would know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the department that's saying. what the-
Everybody has a different set of standards for this. And
Right.
the insurance companies all have their own.
They all
So
have
they
their-
don't care what the city does.
Absolutely right.
The insurance companies and the Public Utilities Commission both set their own standards.
Right. Yeah, according to CAL FIRE, we're already in extreme high fire risk.
Right, right. That's what I thought.
Yeah, so it really depends on who's defining the zone and what map we're using. And
Exactly. And that's what I was alluding to.
Okay.
I think
That's
you're
all
right,
going to
Kathy.
be
We
discussed.
need to do a deep dive on all of Article 12, the landscaping standards.
Exactly. And then I'll just say a couple more and then we can call it another time and I'm okay
Okay.
with that. At the bottom of that same paragraph, it says refer to the local fuel modification plan guidelines. My question was what guidelines?
Yeah.
Do we have them in the city? I don't know that we
Never.
do. But that needs to be defined.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we already went over the next item. That was about the invasives. We've done that.
Right?
Then on the next page,
This is 24.
yeah, this would be on page 24. We already talked about the mulch and that needs more information.
Right?
We did that. Wait a minute, let me see here. And if you go to Roman numeral 7, that was more about the organic mulch. That needs more work also. Once again, they talk about the local fuel modification plan guidelines. What guidelines? Other applicable local ordinances. What ordinances? So those all need to be defined, and it sounds like it's a bigger topic.
Right.
We definitely need to do it. Then if you go on to the next page, page 25, it number 10 says at the top of the page, identify location installation details and 24-hour retention of infiltration capacity of any applicable stormwater best management practices that encourage on-site retention and infiltration of stormwater.
Who does that? Who's supposed to hold the design plan, landscape design plan is supposed to
So
do that.
yeah, depending on what it is, the civil engineer might do it and or the landscape architect.
Right,
might do it.
okay.
So it depends. But it says project applicants shall refer to the city for information. I just want to make sure, does the city have that, or do we need to strike city and say we go to the Regional Water Quality Board? And is that a link? Maybe that's a link, you go to that.
Well, that'd be the
I also-
Los Angeles region, right?
Yeah, but there should be a link for it. And a lot of times when you do your soil management test and report, they will do like a perk rate, kind of an infiltration rate, and you can get information from that to apply to this. But I also wanted to just point something out to consider, maybe a little more research here. And I'm not saying we have to do this, but the County of Santa Barbara, they have tiers depending on basically it's about keeping stormwater on site and it's about water use.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so the tiers go from kind of less complicated to more complicated depending on the size of the project and the property, et cetera. But it's basically, I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, it's another thing that you'd have to turn in. But basically the designer has to demonstrate, how am I keeping water on site? How much water am I collecting? Where is it coming from? And it's basically, it's a checklist, and you have it right in your plans, and you can actually incorporate the checklist there. But considering our water situation, it might be something, I don't want it to be onerous, but once again, it might be a good thing to explore and a good thing we might want to adopt or partially adopt, or at least take a look at. And I'm sure other counties or municipalities have something similar. I'm just familiar with That's
And
what came to my
we
mind.
need also in that to consider, you need to keep your own water on your property.
Well,
But
that's
if
what
you
this does.
recall, yeah, recall that subdivision we looked at that was on,
Yeah,
maybe it was on Daly,
yeah,
where people that lived on Grand were very concerned about the
yes,
water that was coming down a waterway there.
right.
The people that wanted to do the subdivision said, well, most of that water came to me. It was not mine originally.
The water does that.
Yet it came down the hill from existing
Yeah.
parcels that don't have any rules like this. So
Yeah.
we
So
need to
basically
consider
what-
all of that, I think.
Yeah, so basically what I'm looking at here is, or what I'm kind of proposing is that the designer has to demonstrate, hey, I'm doing rain barrels, I'm doing a rain garden, I'm doing a cistern, I'm doing whatever I'm doing.
A bioswale, yeah.
I have to accommodate and show it on my plan, and put the square footage and how much water I'm collecting.
Mhm.
And then essentially that water goes back into the irrigate or into the landscape. So you're reducing your irrigation water use by showing this. So
Hey,
anyway,
Dawn, it sounds-
something to look at.
Yeah, it sounds like you're mentioning MS4 requirements to a certain
Well,
degree.
yeah, with the tiers. And
But
are we?
yeah, I mean they kind of go hand in hand. To a
They
certain
do.
degree.
Yeah. So anyway, let me quickly go through this. I know I don't want to take too long. This would be on page 26. And this would be Roman numeral 3 up at the top where it says if the water pressure is below or exceeds. I don't know that we need to put this in here, but the state of California, along with, I want to say 3 or 4 other states, I think it's Hawaii, Colorado, and there's one other state. They are now, and I have to double check to see if it went into effect. I think it was 2020. But basically all new sprinkler heads are by law required to have pressure regulating devices in them. So I don't know if that affects, but it may just be something we want to look at in the language here. That would have been on.
Yeah, we
3.
can take a look at that. I'm not sure how a pressure regulator is going to raise the pressure because it starts off by saying if the pressure is below.
Well, you're right, it does, and so maybe it doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be out of line there.
So we should
apologize.
take that up in a more detailed discussion.
It actually might be more in A. If the static pressure is above or below the required dynamic pressure, it says pressure regulating devices such as shall be used, or installed. And now a portion of that, not all the equipment, but a portion of it's going to be absolutely, like the manufacturers had to recreate these heads. And that's the
Sure.
only way they could sell them in these states. So
Yep.
yeah, maybe that's just too nitpicky. But anyway, and then I just had a question, and this would have been this is Roman numeral 3B. The last sentence says, if the measurement, maybe I'll read the whole thing. Static water pressure, dynamic or operating pressure and flow, reading of the water supply, shall be measured at the point of connection. These pressure and flow measurements shall be conducted at the design stage. If the measurements are not available at the design stage, the measurements shall be conducted at installation. And my question is, how often does that happen when it is not available at the design stage? And would that probably only happen if somebody bought property and the water meter had not been installed yet, or the
That
water
sounds like
tanks?
that kind of thing, yeah.
So they would go through design review. That hasn't been designed yet. And then I guess maybe at the building permit stage.
Yeah, if you walk up and down Daly, there are some empty lots, but they all have water meters. On the other hand,
Yeah.
the lots on the east side of Daly are quite deep and there are flag lots in there.
Right.
And it may well be that a flag lot doesn't have a meter.
Right. Yeah, alternating. Yeah.
So you might have some of them where you can do the measurements at design and some where you have to do it at installation.
Right. Okay. I just wanted clarity.
I think the language that there probably works.
Right. Okay, and then on page 27 at the top of the page, X, it says relevant information from the soil management plan, such as soil type and infiltration rate, shall be utilized when designing irrigation systems. And I know that was highlighted in yellow. Did we just say we covered that one? I think maybe you had it on there, Stephen. I'm being redundant. Let me just double check. I might not have just checked it off.
It feels like a deeper dive. Because
You think it needs a deeper dive?
what's the soil management plan? Do we have?
You highlighted it, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, you had it highlighted in, so basically soil management report is required by state law. So every new project that requires the landscape package has to, basically you go out, you do a soil test, send it to a lab, and they're going to be testing percent of organic matter. They're going to be testing mineral content, salt content, the type of soil. Is it a clay loam? Is it a sandy loam? Whatever. And the infiltration rate. So I think that's just saying relevant information from the soil management. It says plan. I don't know early if they call it a report or a plan. So maybe that's where the change.
I just searched the code. This is the only place in the code where the phrase soil management plan occurs.
I think I'm looking in the definitions for the soil, the report that's required. It's a soil management report. Why am I missing it? Shouldn't that be in our definition somewhere?
That's in 1207, 10-1207. The whole section is soil management report.
Yeah, so it's report. So maybe plan needs to be changed to report. And that's where you find the relevant information, and that is turned in.
I think you're right. Yep.
Okay, and that.
I'd be happy to change plan to report.
Yeah, and that information is used to design the irrigation. So
sounds like
I think that's good.
Yeah.
That sounds like errata.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sorry I missed that earlier, but there it is. Let me see. I think I only have one more to go, you guys. I think that's it for the time being. Where am I at?
You could even reference 10-2.1207 there.
Yeah. So I think at Roman numeral 13, it says it's highly recommended that the project applicant or city inquire with the local water purveyor about peak water operating demands on the water supply system or water restrictions that may impact the effectiveness of the irrigation system. So I do know with some of the water companies, water purveyors, depending on what your address is, for instance, when you're figuring out your run times for your controller, when you can operate the irrigation, you have to actually show on your plans, like if your address ends, like I'm just making this up for example, if it ends in an even number, maybe your days are like Tuesday and Thursday. If you're an even number, it's Monday and Wednesday. So you have to indicate that on the plan and the name of the water purveyor. So I think that's what they're alluding to, and it just says recommended. I don't know if we want to just leave it as a recommendation, or Lucas, do you think that's something that needs to be, you shall?
It also mentions the city in doing the inquiry.
Exactly. And so I don't know if that's
plan check, I guess.
Yeah. Typically they refer you to the water company because the city of Ojai isn't a water company. So it might just be cleaning the language up and then whether or not we say highly recommended, or do we really want to make sure people are in compliance and they are only designing the irrigation to be operating on certain days and certain water window times?
Well, I wrote in here, I just circled it at this point.
Maybe it could be a deeper dive.
Let me mark it down.
I wrote down shall question mark.
Yeah.
Require that someone make that inquiry.
Right. And then it gets reflected back in the plans about when you're running your irrigation and what days and for
Yeah.
how long. Because a lot of the water companies have a water window. You know, they don't want you watering during the middle of the day unless it's a certain type of irrigation. But you need to make notes on the plan. So, okay, I think I've
Okay.
uh,
So
Did it-
Lucas, do you think you have enough to go,
I have a lot of sticky notes here. A lot of sticky
yeah.
we'll come back with an amended draft text amendment.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to item 4, future agenda items. There's one I don't see, but I mentioned to Lucas earlier in the week. Now that we have a full complement of commissioners, we should elect a chair and vice chair. And I would recommend that we do that at the earliest possible meeting for which we can legally notice it as an agenda item.
Yeah, so that would be the October 7th meeting.
Okay? Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
I should also mention that, what was it? Where's my notes at here?
Election of officers.
Also, I know we have a standing item on each of our agendas regarding planning, the general plan update. And just so you know, while we haven't had much discussion about it in recent meetings, just know that is coming. We've been meeting pretty heavily with the consultant with Ramey and Associates, and this is definitely going to be taking off here and taking off very quickly. So you can start expecting that you'll be getting updates from me and or presentations from Ramey and Associates. So
Good.
expect that.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
it's exciting.
whenever we do have another joint meeting with the city council, I think the question of the planning commission's role in that is going to come back up again. Because it's been on our list of topics every time.
All right.
All right, any other questions for staff about future agenda items? Then let's roll to the grand finale and hear from our city council liaison.
Am I unmuted? Yes, I am.
You are.
Yeah. All I can say is thank you so much for your dedication and your stamina. Another 3.5-hour meeting filled with insightful discussion. At least for me, I continue to get a riveting education from all of you. No, this will make my job. You know, when many of these things come before the council, I will feel better prepared, and so I am genuinely thankful. And I will continue to either be present in the next coming months, or I always watch the meetings anyway to keep up. So thank you. But if you have any questions, now's your chance. Yeah. Otherwise, good night. Thank you.
Okay. There being no other business before the commission, I declare the meeting adjourned at 9:33. Thank you all very much. And I appreciate your diligence for going through these things section by section. I know it's boring in many ways. I know it's exhausting, but it's good work that we're doing for the city. Thank you all.
You are. Yeah, thank you.